think this product over here that I don't represent would be better for you. That, all of a sudden, now you become a trusted advisor rather than a salesman.
And I often say that we have all the requirements of space, right? Because it has to go underground and send us data from miles and miles away, and it has to work. Like, failure is not an option.
We'll put on, a standard mule shoe. Ours is slightly different just for that, but it's, everybody's got one.
The top drive and the drawworks really don't care whether the electrons coming at it are from a joystick or a PLC.
The panel, what you see here on the left, which is now controlled by one of my students, is showing you actually the control of our brakes.
As of now, geothermal is a pretty small market.
If you have tortuosity, the casing will be up against the side on part of the well. There won't be any cement there. The cement will have crescent around it.
So managed pressure drilling, it's been defined as a process to precisely control the pressure profile in the wellbore.
The key is being transparent with our clients in this case. So tell them what happened. If we had a failure, tell them exactly what happened. Whether it's our fault, whether it's whatever the issue was, we need to be transparent.
I think it's very important for everyone in the industry to know what's out there and kind of what's happening downhole as well.
I've probably worked on over 40 different performance limiters in my career. If I miss any of those and the computer is raising weight on bit and I miss any of those, I have a train wreck. The computer's going in the ocean.
Here's your new colors, here's your new thing. We don't do that at all.
Here's the tattoo you need to get.
Yeah, here's the tattoo. Sorry about the last one. We used to fake that all the time.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. You are not mistaken. Today is not Friday. Today is Monday. I know. I think this is the first time. This might possibly be the first time I ever did a Vidor Locksmith episode on Monday, mainly because today is Amazon Prime Day, and apparently it's the day to be live streaming on Amazon. So what better way to be able to live stream on Amazon than to bring them the Vidor Locksmith show? So super excited about this. I'm actually going to try, if I can do this, and I should be able to. Standing shouldn't be that hard of an activity for 4 straight hours. We've got 4 different authors coming onto the show, doing an interview for an hour. The whole goal with this is to be able to same shit in different day. Oh, I'm not supposed to cuss. We're on Amazon. Whoops. All right. The whole goal of this is now that I'm doing the stuff with Amazon, is to be able to bring the oil and gas community and the people that make up our industry and bring them over to Amazon. Be able to put them directly in front of the consumers that are buying the products that are essentially being created from what we do within our industry. So really excited about being able to do this. It's quite an opportunity, and I'm really glad to be able to be at the forefront of our industry and being able to bring our message forward to those people out there that are watching live on Amazon. So we are live on Amazon, we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn. For some reason, because not David's fault, shouldn't put him into this. My fault 100%. I was messing around with way too much stuff trying to get live this morning. I have another camera that I'm trying to set up. Granted, this is like one of those little, this is not a normal GoPro. This is like a little $60 thing from Amazon that I bought the other day. It was working for like half a second, but had stuff on the screen. So I tried figuring out and getting that to work. Didn't work. So anyways, we've got a total of 4 people watching over on Amazon right now. So we're going to be taking questions from people watching on Amazon. We're going to be taking people from LinkedIn, from YouTube, from all over the place. So here we go. Without further ado, because I know he's got a meeting, probably to go play golf or something like that. Let me see, make sure I get the button here. So here is our guest of the day, Mr. David Ramsden-Wood of #Hot Take of the Day. David, thank you so much for being here on what I'm going to say is the inaugural Vidor Locksmith show on Amazon. So having been on the show 3 times now being your 4th time. Thank you so much for being here and being such a great representative to our industry, sir.
Well, you're very welcome, and thanks for the invites, and congrats on continuing to grow your brand. And it's good to get on all the different platforms to be able to talk about our message.
Well, you did say you have a meeting today. What is on the agenda for you today, sir?
So it's hard to believe, but I went back to work. I think people, I know, right? That's been the reaction. There's an over under from my friends at the course. They have a 90-day over under on my ability to last in the employment world again. But no, I mean, honestly, like, as you know, we sold One Energy at the end of 2018. I stayed with the family office that bought us until 2019. The rest of the team stayed there. I've been very open about my commentary around the industry, that I think all the rock worth owning is already owned by somebody. And so me raising capital to go start a new company to disaggregate assets made no sense to me. And so I took 18 months to kind of figure out what I was going to do. And as you know, I got suspended from LinkedIn for a period of time, and it really made me think about, is this what I want? And I had an opportunity to go work for Hitachi Vantara, which is more oil and gas digitization, helping with data, helping with process, helping with systems, helping with upgrading our whole infrastructure as an industry to make us better, faster with data. And so when that opportunity came up, I thought it was the best way for me to be able to continue to serve and help the industry, and also be able to continue to get the message out there about how important our industry is. So that's what I did. I started June 1st. We're in week 4 now. And Mondays are like the crazy meetings day. I haven't had crazy meeting days in about 4 years. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun.
So how was that when you were going back through the interview process? Because I for one, like, if I was back in the interview process, I would probably just end up shooting myself in the foot so much, just because of the freedom that I've had,
right,
and not having to curtail it. Minus today, not supposedly I'm not supposed to cuss. I need to go back and read the fine print one more time. But how was that? How was that getting back into that groove and sitting across the table from somebody?
Well, I mean, so it's been good, right? Like, I've been fortunate. So we now have to call it a sabbatical rather than retirement. But I was kind of retired for 18 months. And I have to tell you, like, it's the dream. And everyone's always like, I'm going to work for the next 20 years and save this much money and put my kids through college and then retire. And I would tell you that's not a good dream for you to have. It gets boring. And I think, and to be honest, like, I felt like, and look, it was very valuable, and I still believe that what I do on LinkedIn with the blog and the podcast, although I podcast less frequently now, I think it was good for people to hear sort of the message of what our industry was and wasn't, and to know, as you know, I pulled no punches. I was very transparent about my thoughts, but especially when I got banned from LinkedIn, like, I kind of lost purpose, and it also happened during it happened through coronavirus, right? So the whole world is shut down. And as you know, I was going back to March of last year. I was very against all the things that we were doing to manage the message around coronavirus and also the lockdown. And on LinkedIn, the first 6 months, people were like, "You just hate my grandma. You're a horrible person." And now 15 months later, if you read all the stuff I wrote last March, all of that stuff came to be true. The fatality rates, what was going to happen to the economy. The only thing I missed was the Federal Reserve. But the point being, because of that, it created more controversy than I intended, and more animosity. I would get like hate mail in the middle of the night from people who would, like, death threaty kind of things. Like, I got some weird stuff. And so as I was thinking about what I wanted to do, it made me reframe. And so going into a new role with a new company that isn't upstream, I kind of feel like I'm starting my career again. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, was the interview process was great because I feel like a college kid. I feel like I just graduated with this, 20-year degree of oil and gas. And now I get to take it to a different side of the business, reconnect with people in a different way, and be helpful to them in a way that I haven't been in the past. And so I'm really excited about it, and we'll see how she goes. Like I said, week 4, and the over/under is 90 days. So my friends have 72 days to go.
Does your employer now know about the 90-day over/under?
Oh yeah, we make. I mean, look, and to your point about the. I am a personality, and I've said this in my book. What the F is wrong with everybody else? What they didn't teach you in business school, which is available on Amazon. There's your plug.
Yeah. Oh, we'll be plugging away here in a minute.
But no, I mean, I said it. You have to be yourself, and this is me, for good or for bad, likable or hateable. I'm always going to say what I think, and I'm gonna give you the best opinion that I can. And so, what I love about Hitachi Vantara is they hired me knowing about LinkedIn. And knowing about my controversy, and knowing about my presentations, and knowing about my views and my stands. And so I really didn't have to pull any punches. And, I'm in a very fortunate situation, which I don't mean to sound arrogant, but One Energy was a success. And so I don't ever have to work again. And so the fact that because of that, I can now have fun, and I can just be valuable, and I don't need to sell people stuff that they don't need. I think I can be more trustworthy, and I think I can be very effective at the role. So it's a partnership with them and with me, and they have no reins on me yet. I'm sure I can't swear as much as I used to, but other than that, it's new and exciting, and I feel very blessed to have the opportunity to do something again.
So during that time when you were banned on LinkedIn, what were you doing to be able to filter your time? Because I know hashtag hot take of the day leading up to that ban was probably one of the, lack of better words, hottest things going on LinkedIn. Right. I mean, it was just blowing on. I mean, you were building up a huge brand there. And so when that happened, what did you do when you found out? What did you do? And then what happened those subsequent days, weeks, and I think it was a month or two.
My partner on Hot Take of the Day, Glenn Parrott, he had the foresight, I guess, if you call it that, to move to email distribution at www.hottakeoftheday.com. And we did that early in 2020 before all this happened. And so the podcast was pushed out on Apple, and the blog was already out there on the internet. And so while LinkedIn, the best part about LinkedIn is obviously the interconnectivity and the comments, and that you have a huge network of people who can reach out to you during DMs. And quite frankly, most of us have email lists. Even if we like the person, we don't read them nearly as much. And so I think that the engagement on LinkedIn, the loss of engagement was hard. And I was doing probably 5 or 10 DMs a day with people, mentoring, guiding, giving career advice, giving life advice, giving financial advice. And so when that went away, it was hard. What did I do? I mean, I continued to write. I continued to do everything that I did. And then I really soul searched on, could I do this for the next 40? I mean, I guess I'm 43. The average life expectancy of a male is 37 more years. So could I really be retired for 37 years? The take was no. So net, I was very fortunate that LinkedIn banned me, because it kind of made me review. And when I got back on, as you know, I didn't change any of my tone. I didn't change anything. And
no, sir.
And I haven't been banned again. So there was a little bit going on with the election and coronavirus. And we've all seen it. The censorship is real from big tech. And they want to manage a message. They don't want to manage the data. And it's unfortunate, but I'm going to continue to say my truth, and hopefully people can see through the narrative.
And that's, you bring up a really great point, because I know a lot of other live streamers, podcasters who either have an amazing guest lined up, have some amazing thoughts lined up, but they don't share them on their platform because they don't want to risk everything that they've built on their platform to have a controversial guest who they think really needs to get the message out there, but they don't want to risk everything with what they might say and how that might be taken from those platforms. And that, to me, that instilling that fear is censorship in and of itself. And that's fairly problematic, because there are great stories to be had out there. So I commend you, sir, for being able to, take what's happened, be able to get back on the platform and still keep pushing forward. So you are a leader in many ways there.
I think it's important. And look, the best thing I think that came out of the hot take of the day is, if you remember when I started writing in November 2018, I was one of the few people in oil and gas. You were certainly one, and there were some other, the Digital Wildcatter guys. But I was one of the few people that was actually writing about our industry. And more to the point, I was being controversial, but also thoughtful. And I think that it's paved a path. You see a lot of people now who are able to be a lot more engaged on the social media and network side. And the fact that I was let's call it a real dude, not, and most people don't even know about One Energy, which I find absolutely hysterical, because that's the reason that, if anything, I'm a real dude because of that in my career, but I became a real dude because of the hot take of the day. But I'm glad that it's allowed people to have a voice, and people are less scared to say real things and have real conversations. So,
well, I know that there's a lot of people who find it hard to believe that I own a data company. And they're like, I'm like, yeah, it's called Gibson Reports. It's literally all around me every time I do this, and still people don't even know about it. So as much as I've done well branding myself, I've done a horrible job branding my company. So I feel you on that front. So I don't want to lose all of our time with you, because I was late and everything. So tell me about this. So I know I've heard a little bit of the story behind the book, but obviously the book comes from when you were in grad school. Give us a rundown about the book and what really brought this on for you to write this book.
Yeah, so actually the book was simpler than that. So I graduated in like 2000, and my goal, bless you. We'll get you a coronavirus test, because you look very symptomatic. I'm deeply concerned about your health. Anyway, so I graduated in 2000. I started right out of school with Anadarko, and my goal was to be the CEO of Exxon. And it didn't dawn on me that I wouldn't be, and that I sort of treated my career like I played squash on the national team as a junior in Canada, and then as a senior in the US. And so I treated my career as though I was a professional athlete, and I didn't really think much about it. And I was an individual sport athlete, right? So I wasn't a team player, if I'm totally honest. And so I figured that skill and merit was going to let me be the CEO of Exxon at some point. And I went down a path for the first 11 years of my career where I had a lot of personal success. I did a lot of the right things for my career and my experience, and we did some amazing projects. But I think in terms of the way I probably thought about employees as transactional, and the way I thought about family and friends as like circumstantial. It was February 1st, 2012, when I was working for a company that I call Bach & Co., although it's not really hard to figure out who it is, but I won't say it right now, on Amazon. And I was fired. And I remember, I'll never forget, I used to, instead of spending time with my family, obviously, I used to go hit golf balls every day at lunch, because I wanted to play in the US Open, which just finished this weekend. That was an awesome win for John Rahm. He deserved it. But I hit balls every day at lunch, and I got an organizational request to talk about org design at 4:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. Now, anyone else, and you always get the feeling of when you're going to be fired, but then you're sort of like, no, I'm not going to really be fired. But I felt it for probably 6 months up to that point. And when I saw that meeting request, I was like, okay, they're going to fire me. So I did what anyone should do. I declined the meeting request. And then I kind of giggled, and I had kind of 10 or 15 minutes of quiet time. And then the HR lady sort of wrote back gingerly and said, was there another time that would be good to talk about organizational design? And I wrote back and I said, I know I'm being fired. I just come in when I get back. And so, after basically ignoring every one of my friends and family and everything but my career for 12 years, I found myself sitting on the couch, reintroducing myself to my family, saying, we have no healthcare, no income. Thanks for moving to this country. I'm sorry I screwed everything up. By the way, I'm David. And I started writing the book the next day, and it took me about 18 months, and it was a process of self-discovery and journey. And the title is What the F is Wrong with Everybody Else? And the answer is obviously you. You're the only interaction in every single interaction you have. You're the only person that's there. And so anything you do, you have to take accountability for. And so I wrote it, I finished it in 2013, and all the lessons I learned are the things that as my entrepreneurial journey continued and ultimately culminated with One Energy, all the lessons from writing that book are the reason that One Energy was successful. And so after we sold the company, I decided I would publish the book, and that's how the LinkedIn thing started.
So going through that book writing process, how difficult was that?
So most people know that I'm not like a writer, and I certainly am not good at grammar. So my hot take of the day is, whatever comes to my mind, and I write exactly like I speak. So for anyone who's ever heard me talk at a speech or knows me, when they read the book, it's like I'm reading it to them, because it's the exact same prose, the exact same enunciation and the way I tell a story. I really enjoyed it, and it was very cathartic. If I were to rewrite the book today, it would be very different than when I wrote it then, if that makes sense. I would have called it The Accidental Entrepreneur, if I'm honest. But the title was catchy, and it was before Mark. What is his last name? He wrote the Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Yes.
I was the first one who had the title, What the F is Wrong with Anybody Else. I just didn't publish it in time. I think it's Mark Manson. But I would rename it now, and I'd reorder it a little bit. But I published it exactly as I wrote it, other than edits to grammar. And so it's a journey of self-discovery. And so for those who've read it or who do read it, I hope there's some nuggets in there that you can take with you and get benefit from.
So having that push you into, what you say, accidental entrepreneurship, how did that feel to be able to go from, working for a company, having the 18 months off, or was it 18 months off to be able to write the book and then started One Energy?
So no, so when I wrote the book, I was working, but I was consulting. Okay. So coming out of the job in 2012, and it was a big job for a young person. I ended up doing a whole bunch of consulting. I helped some startup companies. I worked for some small cap companies, and I co-founded a company up in the Bakken as well. And so I was writing that as I was working. And then by 2016, that's when we founded One Energy with a commitment from Carnelian Energy Capital, who were great partners. And so the three of us, my two partners and myself, founded it in January of 2016. And we hit the market hard, and we did things that other people weren't doing at the time. We were working from home in 3 different cities. We hired a landman once we knew that we were going to be in New Mexico. So then we were in 4 different cities. We had no office, no paper. We did everything on video. People thought we were crazy for not having a physical office, which I find kind of amazing. And then, we prided ourselves that each of us had a skill set. My skill set was operations and business development and evaluation. And that was partnered with my partners. And so our thing was we felt like we could evaluate a deal of any size in any basin in 15 minutes. And so we met a lot of people. We kissed a lot of frogs. And in September 16, we decided to focus on New Mexico. And things worked out really well. So we put 12,000 acres together, drilled 5 wells, and then sold it to Lillis, Franklin Mountain, and Centennial Resource Development. So, and then that culminated that. So the 18 months off was after we sold One Energy and after I retired from the family office. But that was the story. I don't write about the last 5 years in the book at all. I stopped writing in 2013 for that journey, because the journey was kind of complete for me.
Now, as far as the impact the book has had on others, we've even got Matt Hill here who says, great book. I have a signed copy from his guest appearance on Fossil Fuel Friday's episode.
Yeah, I remember that. Good to see you, Matt. I hope you're well.
How does it feel to have an impact on those around you by writing that book?
I mean, it means a lot. I mean, we talked about purpose and why I'm back working. It meant a lot that I could share my story and be transparent about the failures I had. I mean, how many people write a book about them being fired? And I kind of make a joke that I've been fired subsequent to that multiple times. But the difference, the first firing is like the first breakup, I think, with your girlfriend. when you're like in high school. You've never been through it, and you can't believe that that's what's happened. And it takes a lot of insight and personal self-reflection to realize, like, it was not a good fit for me at the time, given my outspokenness, right? I wasn't the one running the company, and I wasn't taking advice from those who were senior than me because I didn't think that they were correct. And so what I learned in the book was that was just going to be me. And I'm a visionary builder. I'm not necessarily the guy you want running a stable company. And so, right, when people ask me what kind of job would I want if I went back to oil and gas, I was like, a bankrupt company that has to redo everything, redo their assets, redo their capital structure. The employees hate it. It's an absolute train wreck. That would be perfect for me because I love the chaos. I love the building and the fixing. But if it was like a stable company that was just running along perfectly well, like, I'm not the right guy. And so that was the self-reflection I had. And I hope that people think about where their strengths are when they read it and say, you know what, I could do that better. Or a lot of people ask me, well, I want to go start a startup. Well, okay. The window for starting an oil and gas startup was 5 years ago, 3 years ago. But the window for starting an oil and gas startup is not today. So if that's where you truly want to go, you need to figure out a growth industry and how you're going to maximize your opportunity, because everything is about ROI. Going to college is ROI. Starting a business is ROI. Taking a job is ROI. Getting married is ROI. Having kids is ROI. Everything has to be considered in the context of return on investment. And so that's what I hope I help with.
Okay, so you mentioned something great there about the window to be able to do a startup within oil and gas. Why do you say now is not a good time?
Well, so we'll say it a couple ways. First, all the rock worth owning is already owned. If you go back to 2012, 2013, 2014, oil was 100 to 147 a barrel, and we tested the Tuscaloosa Marine Shale. We tested the Black Warrior Basin. We tested the Paradox Basin, Mancus. We've tested everything that could be tested at a higher price. And people like to say, oh yeah, but look what we did with technology. We lowered the costs so that we went from $100 oil to economic at 55. That's not factually correct. The Permian was still vertical in 2012, 2013, and they were starting to go horizontal in 14. The only basin that didn't have a hiccup was the Permian. And it was because it was a whole bunch of big landholders that were selling it after the downturn to smaller companies who then really actively went horizontal and proved that at our cost structure, the Permian works at 50. But that was a very unique thing. And then after that land grab went through, all the Permian acres are now held in a company with a capital structure. So it could be private equity, it could be bankrupt, it could be public, it could be whatever, but every acre of rock worth owning that will be economic is owned. Then people say, well, David, what about conventional? And what about EOR? Well, conventional and EOR, we peaked in 1973, and we were in decline until 2005 when we found the Bakken, which was a totally different play. So you can't go back and then say, oh, there's another growth phase in conventionals, because we've already drilled all the conventionals. Could a mom and pop, make some dollars on that? Sure. But does it matter for Exxon, Pioneer, Oxy, Chevron, Shell, BP? No. And so if all the rock is owned, how can I go get $1 billion and go start pulling assets out of these companies and make money? I don't believe that you can. Now there's some people who are trying, and I commend them, and maybe they're right. But my view is I don't think you can make money at that game right now. I think you need to consolidate and cut cost and contemplate international development and taking a larger role. U.S. companies need to take a larger role outside the U.S., developing reserves in Argentina, in Iran, in Iraq, in Venezuela, in Saudi, and we need to develop oil elsewhere because it's more economic, to be quite frank.
So is that something that would interest you, to be able to be a part of a team that's doing some international development?
I mean, so yes and no. International development's
nothing against the company that has you hired right now. So
no. I mean, for me, I did everything I wanted to do in upstream. Right? I worked for a huge company. I worked for a mid company. I ran the assets for a mid company, and then we did the buy and flip. We did it. We had great success. And so I really felt like that chapter of my career was closed. What I think I can help with is the super majors right now, the Exxons, the Shells, the Oxys, the Chevrons, the Pioneers. How can they get better use of their data more cost effectively and replicate that so that they can free up their resources for them to deploy capital outside of the United States, which comes to ESG and investor pressure. At the end of the day, oil and gas is going nowhere. And in the United States, we've dropped our CO2 emissions since 2005 by 23%. And that's all because of natural gas. And so, we're shutting down nuclear plants. We're having rolling blackouts. In Texas right now, you're being asked to set your thermostat to 78 degrees at night. And I don't know about anyone else, but I cannot sleep if it's 78 degrees at night, right?
That's not happening.
It's not happening. So we need power. Wind and solar are great. They're great supplements, but they're not what you build base load on. Fossil fuels are, nuclear is, and we're going to need it for the rest of the world. So yeah, I don't want to do the international myself, but I want to help companies with their strategy and with their data to be able to help execute efficiently.
So tell me a little bit about that. So obviously, like you said, you're going into, you said like a new foray for you. What have you seen thus far, or what do you believe is the best data strategy going forward?
Well, you need to have a standard across the company so that you don't replicate your data storage. Everyone in oil and gas has been trying to solve this problem forever, but we still run the companies on Excel. And for One Energy, I could run the company on Excel because it was very, very small. But for Exxon, for Chevron, for Shell, for Pioneer. So first of all, Pioneer, for example, just bought Parsley, and they just bought Double Point. And so you have these hundreds of thousands of acres. You have these massive legacy systems. How do you get all that data into Pioneer's data system so that their staff can then optimize that development plan without missing a beat? And quite frankly, I hate to say this, and I've been saying it for a very long time, employment in our industry is going down 80% from the high. And we're all seeing it. And when I first said it, as you know, people were very, very upset with me for saying it. I'm not saying it to be mean. I'm saying it because that's what's happening. Every time a company A buys company B, one of their staff is fully let go. And so if we continue the consolidation trend, which is very, very prevalent, we're going to see staff be let go over and over and over, and we're going to lose staff, which means we need to lower costs. And the best way you can do that is through data. So everyone's systems are different and everyone's legacy apps are different, but how do you turn data into intelligence faster? That's sort of the discussion that we have with everybody.
I think you're absolutely right. I know that when I started talking to the community that usually follows me within the oilfield service niche, specifically directional drilling, MWD, I think it was Matt Isabel had come out in 2016, 2017. He was going around he was doing the roadshow as far as doing presentations about doing remote directional drilling, remote services. And I remember posting something about it, and everybody got mad at me, and they were like, "Wow, this is BS. This is BS." I was like, "No, this is what they're doing right now." And I was trying to take the standpoint of like, if we can inform people right now that this is what's taking place, then you have the information and the knowledge set to be able to decide where to go in the future, as opposed to getting into the future, not knowing that this was taking place, and then being completely blindsided by it and understanding what your personal value proposition is there. So it is unfortunate to see, but yes, it is happening in the industry. So which takes me to my next question. Obviously, we've had a lot of, I think the last time we talked was just after the election. We've had a lot of movement, and I know that you've been on, your speaking tour talking about ESG and things of that nature. How much more do you think that this is going to continue to affect the industry, and how far down the hill is this going to roll? Are we eventually going to see small service companies, right, that might be just something that guys are like, hey, let's go buy a vac truck, and then they have to go get an ESG certification before they even show up on a rig site, just like you have to get a safety cert?
I think the answer to that question is yes. I think that's also part of the reason why we have to get bigger and consolidate. Is owning a single vac truck, you just can't meet the compliance standards. And let's continue to say, I've said this in the past, I believe that there will be very large mergers and that there will be 10 companies left in 3 years. Now, there will always be some privates and there will always be some family, but I mean, publicly traded oil and gas companies, there will be like 10. And, I think they're going to be Pioneer, Shell, BP, if they stay in the space. I mean, I think the Shell sale is super interesting, and it brings to light, Shell was told by a Dutch court they have to reduce their CO2 emissions by 45%. Now, the only way they can actually reduce their CO2 emissions is to sell assets. So the Permian immediately came out and was a trial balloon that they're going to sell their 260,000 acres, 190,000 barrels a day. And they think that the price tag will be $10 billion. Well, Shell's going to sell it, and then they're going to reduce their carbon footprint. But the asset doesn't go away. We're just moving it. BP did the same thing when they sold their Alaska asset. They said that, oh, look what we've done. We've reduced emissions. But they just gave them to Hillcorp. So you're going to see these Shell games.
You get rid of the problem. You just gave it to somebody else.
You just gave it to somebody else.
Not to say it's a problem.
No, but I mean, you just gave it to somebody else. And so you're going to see these Shell games that are going to continue to play. At the core, what should our industry be doing? We should not be using fresh water because I'm not worried about climate change at all. Temperature goes up 2 degrees in the next 60 years, whatever. Honestly, I don't care. What I care a lot about is we have fresh water problems. And we frack with fresh water. We water golf courses with fresh water. We do a lot of things with fresh water. And as the population continues to grow, we're going to run out of water. And you can last 3 days without water. You can last 2 weeks without food. And you can, last a lifetime without love, I guess. But we need to frack with recycled water, 100%. We need to stop flaring. And we need to do what we can to capture thief emissions as methane, because methane has, depending on your stat, 25 to 85 times the CO2, the greenhouse gas impact that CO2 does. And so reducing methane is a positive for the world, and it makes sense. Those are the ESG things we should be doing. Randomly putting minorities on boards is a virtue signal thing that makes no difference. The boards are all friends of the management team. If we really want to have governance issues, stop having your friends as the people on your management team. Like that on your board, but no one's doing that. We're just making, the Asian minority is my friend, and so now you get to be on a board. Congratulations! Here's $250,000 a year for 4 meetings. That's where our industry lacks. That's where all industries lack is we're using lip service around governance, which it's not really governance. And we let the media drive narrative around how terrifying climate change is. And if you have a conversation around it, everyone's like, ooh, boo, you don't believe in it. No, I believe in it. I just think that it's too expensive to deal with. And there's lots of authors that talk about that. And net zero, what does that even mean? Like, we used to be 2,800 ppm of CO2 in the world. We're now 417 if you look at the last thing. Okay, carbon goes up, carbon goes down, temperature goes up, temperature goes down. There's a very strong correlation when you look at world population and CO2. Because as it turns out, when I go like this, I create CO2. So when you have 7.8 billion people on the planet, CO2 is going to go up when you're emitting CO2. So anyway.
So we should stop exercising.
Well, I mean, we should stop cutting down trees to build houses for the increased population, because the trees are the things that eat the CO2. So we are, by definition, a climate changer, because you couldn't live in Minnesota without a house. So we go and cut down a whole bunch of trees. We build a house, we build a community, we build roads to it. We then bring in power to it, and we run a furnace to run our house at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is where humans are built to live in minus 30 during the winter. Like, of course we cause climate change. We change the climate around us to create everything that we have. And I personally am not willing to trade my air conditioning for this utopian view of living in a village, being chased by a bear like Leonardo DiCaprio in the Revenant. That looked horrible.
I think that's a great statement. We are climate changers. We set up shop in Midland. Great place. You put a house there, and you put AC in there, you're changing the climate that is what is naturally there. Or in, like you said, up north, Canada, or in Minnesota, wherever the place is, that is a normal environment that you would not want to just be outside in year round.
Right. And then people talk about like, and again, this is where I struggle with the media, because we need to have these conversations. As you know, I've been posting on LinkedIn that ERCOT has a great website where they show the number of megawatts being created by wind at any given time. You can look at the load, and you know by looking at that system, it's mostly windy at night. So there's 29,000 megawatts of installed wind capacity that gets a 2 cent per kilowatt hour subsidy from the federal government for building it. Therefore, you cannot lose money on the power, even though you can't choose when it's made. The power gets made when it's windy, and then you are forced, whoever has connection is forced to buy it. And so spot prices, because the demand changes, can go negative, and wind producers cannot lose money. And yet at 8 in the morning, you'll have 500 megawatts of wind generation out of 29,000 megawatts that could be. And the only way to back that up as the day gets warmer is to use natural gas, coal, and nuclear. And no one has that conversation. They keep wanting to build more wind and build more solar. And you can't turn that stuff on. And the media will not allow this conversation to occur. The second the polar vortex happened in February, Bloomberg comes out with an article that says wind's not to blame. So hold on. The $50 billion man who owns a media company, who ran for president of the United States on an anti-fossil fuels platform, his newspaper came out and said it wasn't wind the day after, and he was able to do a diagnosis of what the real problem was in ERCOT the next day? Really? No. It's 100% narrative, and they control the voice. So, like, people are not allowed to have the conversation that, like, when you look at Kauai doesn't have natural gas because there's no pipes. They don't burn coal because it's dirty. And they don't build windmills because it creates bird ecologic damage. They use hydro, solar, and batteries. And their power cost is 3 times more than it is in the United States mainland. And they use 75% less power per household because the climate is perfect in Hawaii. So we're trying to model California, the greatest climate in America, and Hawaii, where you use less power, and we're trying to use those plans in Minnesota, where it's cold as F. It makes no sense, and no one is having that conversation. Rant's over. Come on.
All right. I know you got a meeting coming up. I don't want to keep you all the way up until the buzzer. Any last words from you there, even though that was a great mic drop moment there for you?
No, I always appreciate what you're doing. I love the conversations. I love the dialogue. I'm always happy to come on here and chat about it. And a plug for the book. The best writing's obviously done in the first 6 pages. It's a pretty easy read. It was a labor of passion. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, please link in on me. David Ramsden-Wood. You can follow the hashtag on LinkedIn, hashtag Hot Take of the Day. Subscribe to our newsletter at www.hottakeoftheday.com. And buy the book, and I look forward to seeing you in my tours around the country.
One last question for you. Any advice for anybody who does want to write a book?
Yeah, just write from your heart. Like, don't stage anything. I think that whether it's through your career and all your personal interactions, the reason the Hot Take of the Day works, and the reason, honestly, I can drone on and people listen, I have no agenda. I'm saying exactly what I think. I provide the data that backs it up, and I'm happy to engage in a dialogue. So that is me. That is authentically me. So when you write a book, be authentically you. When you go to work and have engagements with your friends, with your family, with your everything, be authentically you. And I think that you'll have a lot more success in your life and a lot more happiness. And we're all working on being perfectly authentic, but that's what I tell everybody. Just you're all great people, and we all have different skills. So go leverage it.
Well, thank you so much for being on this marathon of a show today. Next up, we've got Tim Wigham out from Exceed, who's actually going to be tuning in from the UK. David, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully, through all of the people that have watched us on Amazon, hopefully we've started to be able to control a little bit better of the narrative that is the oil and gas industry, and look forward to your amazing success. And I completely believe you'll make it over 90 days.
Well, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll look forward to chatting with you soon.
All right. Talk to you later, David. All right. Well, guys, I'm still going to be here. David's going to jump off. So I'm going for 4 straight hours today. 4 straight hours. Everybody that's been tuning in. So we've got Sarge Summers tuning in. Sarge, thanks for being here. Brian's here. Matt Hill's here. I don't know if everybody else is still here. Todd Brooker's here. Guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. So let's see. We're up to 27 people watching on LinkedIn. We've had a whole bunch of people tune in on Amazon. So guys, I dropped the link there. I'll do it again. If you guys want to watch on Amazon, that is the link. I just put it into the comment section. I'll put it over here on this one as well. Tim Wigham is our next guest up on this show. Let me pull it up, make sure that I haven't gotten any emails from him or anything here. Okay, I have not, which is okay. Just want to make sure that I don't miss him. I need to be able to see if I can get this one. Oh, that's me. That's why it's there. See, I've got another connection that's up. Need to be able to get that one off. All right. Steve's here. Steve's watching. Steve, let's do tomorrow. We're going to get Steve on the show. Steve's written a book called Navigating B2B. We're going to get Steve on the show tomorrow to be able to talk about his book. Like I said, we're doing the marathon today. We'll keep this thing going. Curtis Randolph. Curtis, thanks for being here. Curtis is tuned in. So while we're waiting on the next guest, I want to let you guys know. Like I said, now being able to stream live on Amazon in conjunction with YouTube and LinkedIn. I tried to do Facebook, but we started just a couple of minutes late, and LinkedIn doesn't like it when you do that, or Facebook doesn't like it when you do that. So all it's kind of lost there. So the people that are tuning in on Amazon, if you guys are watching on Amazon, please hit the unmute button and then click, I don't know, there's like a follow right there. Click the follow button. Appreciate it. That's how Amazon determines whether you're worth a snot or not. If you want to be able to get a larger audience, you have to first build your own audience, and then they will plug you big time. One of my friends got 1,100 people watching yesterday as they were talking about, what was it, like sandpaper or something on Amazon. It's crazy. So yeah, with this platform, you guys, I'm going to be talking, we're going to talk to authors, not just in oil and gas, but around oil and gas. Next up, we got Tim Wigham, who's written Accelerating Automatic Lead Transformation, Inspired Performance, Inspired 2, Inspired Again. Then after that, we've got Scott Taylor, Telling Your Data Story. He's an absolutely amazing person. If you haven't seen him on LinkedIn, guy's hilarious. As well as later today, I actually have a family member of mine who is going to be coming onto the show. That is Bob Bryant. I want to call him an uncle because he's older than me, but he's actually my dad's cousin, so he's a second cousin. But he's more of that uncle kind of figure to me. Anyways, Bob is a professor at University of St. Edwards, and he teaches video game design and production. Yes, video game design and production. He's going to be live with me at 2 o'clock. So if you've ever had the idea of being able to do video game design and production, 2 o'clock. You want to design your own video game? You know somebody who wants to start designing their own video games? This is the guy. He is one of the original video game testers. Right? He's also written the book Slay the Dragon. Absolutely amazing book. I cannot wait to have him on. He's definitely one of the people that when we have family gatherings, I try to sit next to him because his brain is full of just so many amazing things, and he's an absolutely amazing person. So anybody who's into video games, be sure to tune into that one later. It's going to be absolutely amazing. ICP started following. So ICP, thank you. I do appreciate that. So anybody else that's watching here, I guess jump on over to Amazon if you like. And as soon as Tim jumps in, we'll start that part of the interview. I should say this. I wish I could get this thing to work. Let's see if it does. Nope, it still does not. All right. Maybe if I turned it on, it would work. And let's try it again. It is not doing what it is supposed to. Let's see here. Let's see here. Nope. I'm trying, you guys. I'm trying new stuff. Constantly trying new stuff. Doesn't always work the way I want it to. But if I do not go out of focus, I will. Anybody else that's watching, if any of you guys are still on LinkedIn and watching this, please let me know. It still says we've got a handful of people watching, but you guys let me know if you guys are still watching. I'm trying. Let's see if we can get this little camera working. Okay, it's showing that it's working. Now, when I plug it in, it should do what I want it to do. Boop. Nope. Why does it not want to do what I want it to do? I don't get that. Okay, I get you. Okay, I understand what these buttons are for now. Okay, no file. Okay, that's, nope. Okay, maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I had it on the wrong setting. So, oh, maybe this one won't do live output. That's the case. That's no fun. Dang. I am on LinkedIn and Amazon at the same time. Oh, both working. Ian, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Man. All right. Well, I don't know if Tim's coming or not. It is 9:01. I will try to shoot him a message real quick. We are losing viewers fast. All right. Ian Perch. Oh, okay. There we go. All right. Chris Giles started following. Amazon's customers started following. Thanks, you guys that are watching over there on Amazon. Do appreciate it. Thank you. Do need to change up some of the carousel stuff here. So let's go ahead and do that. For any of you guys that are watching on LinkedIn or YouTube and you're like, what is all this Amazon stuff? This is our opportunity to be able to bring our message of what's happening in the energy, oil and gas, hydrocarbon business directly to consumers that are out there, right? We all know that there's been a, lack of better words, PR issue within our industry. And so this is our chance to be able to kind of take hold of that and be able to do something about it. So, all right, let's see here. I'm just going to click this one back, edit. And all I got to do is just move these books back up here. If one of you guys did get David's book from our nice little event here, please let me know. Love to be able to hear that. Okay, there it is. Everything's set and ready to go. If I have to talk by myself for the next hour, this is going to be rough, but I can do it. I spend a lot of time just talking to myself. Okay, so let me see if everything is set up correctly here. Everything change place. There we go. Cool. Looking forward to the interview. All the best. Get this working. Leroy, thank you for being here, sir. Absolutely amazing guest. I shouldn't say guest, fan or viewer that's watching the show. Do appreciate it. So guys, if you are watching on LinkedIn, if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to jump over to Amazon. It is Amazon Prime Day, so you never know. You might be able to find a deal on something that you might be looking for. I don't even know if I'm able to see the stats so far. I don't think I am. If I click this button, let's see here. No, it does not show me the stats as of yet. Yes, it's not going to be till I end. Once we end, then it'll show the stats or whatever. but I'm pretty sure the stats are going to be out of this world for being able to do this. All right, so let me shoot an email over to Tim real quick. And as I'm doing that, if you guys do have any questions, feel free to fire them off. This is like everybody's chance here to be able to start asking me questions, because usually I've got a guest on, and so I don't do a lot of talking myself. So if you do have some specific questions to me, now is a great time for it. Sent items. No, it was sent. Uh-oh. Where is the link? Uh-oh. Well, if Mr. Ramsden-Wood got it, somebody else had to have gotten it. I don't know. What is going on here? I don't know. This is something screwy. Okay. Let's see here. Uh-oh. If you're writing a book, David, what would the title be? Wow, great question. Wow, that is a really good question. How about screwing up better than everybody else? I would say that's probably, I got something on my shoulder. Screwing up better than everyone else, because essentially that's what's got me to here. And so I think that would probably be it. All right, inbox, here we go. Yeah, there it is. Okay, I found the email. Okay. Control C, and that's why it didn't do it, right? Because I sent it from my other email. New email. Control V. All right. Joe, Cann, Tim, and Mr. Scott. You know what? I'll just leave it with those two. Show link. Okay. Well. There we go. All right. Yes. So next question. What is the most exciting thing happening or coming up at Gibson Reports? The most exciting thing for me that we're actually doing within Gibson Reports is my intern. I don't like to call him an intern, but it's the best way to be able to describe him. He's a student that's still in college, but he's an absolutely amazing engineer. We have created a way for the directional drilling MWD service companies to be able to find new drilling permits around them with the website. So you can select your company, a mile radius, and then be able to see how many permits are offset to you and categorized by operator within that 10-mile radius and over a given time period. So essentially, if you're looking for work offset to you, it expedites that process much faster. So while we're still waiting here, pretty sure Amazon's not gonna like what I'm doing, but just trying to wait until the next guest shows up. I'm going for 4 hours straight regardless. So if I just have to end up sitting down and just doing work, then that's what we'll do. And viewership can drop off, and that's fine. That's what we'll do. Hey, David, I'm giving the Amazon a try for you. Old and comfortable with limited change, LOL. I'm giving the Amazon a try for you. Well, thank you very much, Amazon customer. Doesn't show you who your name is, but I do appreciate it, giving this a shot. It does help out. Don't answer now. Talk for an hour. If Tim can't make it, we can weigh in at the end, but screwing up better than anyone else is a great placeholder. Because that's what we're doing right now. I'm screwing up better than anybody else because apparently I didn't communicate. But time to be on the show. Tim is active on LinkedIn, so maybe we could shoot him a message there. Maybe he already shot me a message, said he couldn't make it. I don't know. So wait. Well, is it 9 a.m.? Okay, it's 9 a.m. We have somebody at 10. Steve sent me a message, said he could make 10. We've already got somebody booked for 10. So let's see here. And we're doing it live. This is so much better than Friday, though. Friday was a colossal screw up on my part. So anybody that watched that one on Friday, Andrew knows what I'm talking about. Does my keyboard not work anymore? What's the problem here? Okay, let's see here. Okay, it worked there. Okay, well then it just didn't want to work on that page. Tim. There we go. Okay, I guess everybody's name is Wigham. There he is. Join today. Okay. Still waiting. We'll see what happens here. Make sure I said this. Yeah, that's I got the maybe I didn't say Monday or something. I don't know. All right, if you forgot, no big deal. I can keep this thing going for the next hour by myself. All right. So he's going to jump in 15 minutes. All right, so now we're up to 4 people watching on YouTube, and I apologize for everybody who's watching on YouTube that was expecting something fantastic. We're trying here. New stuff. Tim just sent me a message that he can join in 15 minutes, so Tim will be here. In the meantime, we can talk about some of the other stuff. So we've got Christopher Sean Cougar. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, it was Patty. Patty was the other person that is the Amazon customer that started following. Thank you, sir. All right. Wow. I don't expect everybody that's watching across all the platforms to stay tuned in this entire time, but I thank you all for being here and watching. Still trying to do great stuff with this platform to be able to, you know, show everybody a new side to our industry. All right, so now I've got to be able to talk by myself for the next 15 minutes. What to do, what to do. What is it on my shirt? Oh, there we go. Okay, now let's go. Well, didn't expect to have this happen. So maybe if Joe's still watching, we'll send Joe the link and then Joe can just join in. I was going to keep up the great work. Well, David, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Oh, wait, here's Tim. We didn't have to wait the 15 minutes. There we go.
Good to see you.
Tim, good morning, sir. You are live right now.
Fantastic. I like it.
All right. So I don't know if you've ever seen anything on Amazon Live before, but we are streaming live on Amazon, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We started a little late this morning with David Ramsden-Wood, so we couldn't get Facebook in there, but we've got the other 3 platforms. The introduction as to earlier today was weird, at least for myself, trying to be able to bring the amazing and awesome people that are in the oil and gas industry to the forefront of those people that are watching there, not just on Amazon, but also to LinkedIn and YouTube. But I know the audience that I have on YouTube. I know the audience that we've got on LinkedIn, but we have no idea who the audience is over on Amazon. And so we're just trying to do our best to be good stewards of our industry and show some of those people, some of the amazing people in our industry. And today we're bringing about 4 authors and yourself, one of them. So Tim, I looked it up. You've got 4 different books that you have authored, correct?
That's correct. Yes, that's right, Dave. Yeah. Basically, the Inspired series was was actually inspired by my experience as a performance coach to upstream oil and gas projects, from drilling to decommissioning and everything in between, in areas as far-flung as West Africa, North Sea, Southeast Asia, supporting drilling teams, as I say, and helping them accelerate the learning curve, accelerate the team building curve, and basically learning from them, learning from the drilling supervisors and the rig managers, the OIMs, the supervisors, and basically what I tried to do with the Inspired series, which was 3 books in a row over 3 years, was to share some of my insights, to share what seemed to work for pulling teams together and getting better. My final book, Accelerating Automatic, was actually a distillation of the insights that I shared on the Inspired series to actually try and organize the ideas into a system which any aspirant leader in any industry, actually, but particularly sort of heavy industries where there's high risk, high cost, high ego type environments, to try and help them accelerate that learning curve.
So you say that it's based on you being a performance coach. Now I know most people would associate being a performance coach with doing, athletic things, or maybe even like motorsports. Are there CEOs out there and companies out there that are looking for somebody to be a performance coach for their teams?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the more famous performance gurus would be someone like Tony Robbins, who's pretty well known now, of course, after many decades of providing performance coaching to presidents of the United States, top sportsmen and women in various different sports. So Tony Robbins would be an example of a sort of high profile celebrity supporting performance coach, if you like. And so to answer your question, Dave, there are many organizations who respect and realize the value of accountability partnership. So looking to invest in objective external expertise to provide an additional perspective regarding how to pull a team together, how to set goals and objectives, and then how to strive for those goals and objectives in alignment, working together as one. It sounds easy, but it seldom is. And so, the idea, the concept of performance coaching has actually gathered steam over the last few decades, even in the energy sector, in oil and gas. And I'm glad to see that, because I think we can all learn from each other, and bringing in external support that has not been subject to the internal politics, the internal performance creep that may have emerged over many years of working with the same people doing the same thing. It can stimulate and re-energize, and we've had that feedback many times over the years. So I think the value proposition is here to stay, but as is often the case, it relies on the right people and the right chemistry between client leadership and the coaching support in order for it to really add good value.
So let me ask you this: how did you get started? Doing performance coaching. Obviously, you had to have been doing this before you wrote the books. So, how did you get started? And what was that lead up to? Just before you started to author the books.
No, that's a fantastic question, Dave. Thanks for asking that. I mean, I after school, I wanted to do something a little less ordinary. So while most of my friends were heading off to university, I took a year off traveling, and at the latter end of my year off traveling, I ended up doing selection to become an officer in the Royal Marines in the UK. So I ended up doing 8 to 9 years in the Royal Marines in the UK, did operational tours in places like Northern Ireland, West Africa, a former Soviet state of Georgia, and then training exercises, lots of them in the US with the US Marines, and then in the Mediterranean as well with some of the EU countries. And what I loved about my time leading Marines was understanding how to create a climate or create the conditions for the team to flourish and to realize their potential. So when I decided to leave the Marines, decided to do an MBA to sort of harness my transferable skills from a military background into a commercial context, and realized that my passion continued to be for supporting teams, supporting leaders, and helping them to unlock their capability. And so I was attracted to management consulting, and then more specifically, the idea of performance coaching. Not that I called it that at that stage, but in hindsight, when you join the dots looking back, that's kind of what it was. And I gravitated towards the heavy industries, perhaps because that aligned with my time in the military. And I found myself in oil and gas. So, just serendipitously met a few people who wanted to work with me. I wanted to work with them. One of them was the founder of Exceed, who I've been with for the last 15 years, a guy called Ian Mills. And we agreed to work together to develop our approach to supporting teams in oil and gas, which was his background at Exceed. So headed up the performance coaching side of Exceed since 2007. And as we've supported more than 35 teams now in upstream oil and gas, we have listened to the feedback from client leadership teams and evolved our approach to continue to optimize the team building and learning process for these teams. So that's a little bit of the backstory.
So in your early days of doing the performance coaching, what were some of the most surprising issues that you encountered?
Some of the more surprising issues that I encountered was probably around this concept of simple but not easy. Because if you look at the value proposition of coaching for performance, it's really around planning and learning, which sounds really simple, right? It's like, okay, so we're going to go and we're going to go on this mission, which is to get from A to B. We've got to have a plan. So surely that goes without saying. And then having got from A to B, perhaps we got lost a few times, or perhaps, someone tripped on the way. And so surely it makes sense to take some time to look back, learn the lessons so that we can improve for next time. Sounds really simple. What I realized is that it's not easy to get everyone to commit to doing those disciplines every single time, whether they feel like it or not. So, some of my early realizations as a performance coach is that it's hard work, pulling people together, getting people to commit and then follow through with the proven disciplines of improvement, like having an advanced planning meeting or having an after action review, or regularly discussing the lessons that have been learnt or captured to make sure that we come up with a solution for next time, is easier said than done. So that would be one of my key realizations was that it's hard work. And if you don't nominate a dedicated resource who's accountable for the implementation of those disciplines, they will start to fall by the wayside because they are hard work. It's not, it's outside the comfort zone. So yeah, that would probably be my gut answer to your question there.
So then as you guys started to progress in this, what preempted you to be able to think that, like, all right, I need to be able to write a book about this?
I'm a great believer in walking the talk. And so from my point of view, I think, if you're a performance coach encouraging others to share their knowledge and share their learning, then it's only right and proper and appropriate that you do that yourself. So my view was, okay, in order to encourage others to share, I need to share what I learn. And so it was actually at a time of the last downturn in oil and gas, which you may remember, sort of around 2016, where the price of oil dropped and there was uncertainty in the market. And LinkedIn was evolving in terms of its value. And I thought, well, one way to sort of overlay my aspirations to be an author with some thought leadership in the concept of performance coaching would be to do a weekly article on LinkedIn, develop a bit of a following, build a bit of a network, whilst also sharing what I've seen has learnt when I've been on rigs or platforms at the front line. So it kind of all meshed together quite well. And I kind of decided that if I shared something every week, 52 weeks a year, that's 52 chapters of a book. Self-publishing is an easy way to go. You don't have to convince a traditional publisher to back you. And so even though I'm looking at that now, going back 4 or 5 years, I was like, this is pretty straightforward. I just need to maintain the disciplines of weekly sharing, then pull that into a book, which gets checked and edited by a self-publishing a company, and then get these books out there. So that's kind of what I did. And again, it sounds simple. It wasn't always easy because, of course, after 30-odd weekly chapters, you start to think, well, what can I talk about now? But thankfully, there's so much to learn when supporting teams at the front line that I didn't have to scratch my head for too long. You know, there'd be a new theme or a new idea that I thought, right, this needs sharing, this needs discussing, and I'd get it out there.
So over those course of those 52 weeks, like you said, you'd hit like the 30-week mark or whatever. What was your game plan to be able to kind of get through either the I don't want to say it was a writer's block, but maybe the ideas block of whatever the next thought was to be able to put down for the week?
I mean, what I tried to do was kind of leverage off the feedback I was getting on the articles that I was putting out. So, you know, there were a few naysayers early on when I was putting out some thought leadership. There was some negative questions, comments, and what I tried to do was sort of pick up on the question that was within some of the comments and say, okay, healthy skepticism, which is something I've faced as a performance coach on rigs and platforms before, is a good way to build further engagement. So if there was a sort of a challenge to the way to an element of performance coaching, I would try and take that as a topic for a future article and lay out why I felt that element of performance coaching was important. So, for example, one of the things we do is induction and identity, where we challenge a team to come up with a suggested name, which we can turn into a logo for an improvement campaign, which means that we can get away from all the different logos and coveralls and brands and say, hey, we're one united team for this project. Let's come up with a name that's sort of contextual and regional and relevant. And then with a graphic designer, we can come up with a logo that kind of an emblem which represents that team, you know, the heart of that team. You know, I had, as I say, some challenges. Well, that's all the soft stuff. How's that going to make a difference to the performance of how long it takes to drill a well? You kind of step back and help people realize that it's the same in sport. You know, whilst a game is won, say we talk about rugby, by the, you know, the points scored, the tries and the kicks, but you look at someone like a team like New Zealand, you know, there's so many rituals that go on off the fields to pull the team together in order to deliver the results when they're actually playing the game. And so it's the same with an upstream oil and gas team. You have to say, you need to invest time and effort to actually make the team feel like a team before they can go and get the results while drilling the well. And slowly but surely, some of those naysayers and skeptics started to come around, and you know, their challenges changed to contributions to the thread, which was great to see.
So, do you think it'd be worthwhile to have a drilling team do a haka before drilling a well
on the heli deck? Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like the rituals and things like the weekly safety meetings on a rig. You know, you get some charismatic drilling supervisors, and sometimes they would kind of, I guess, do their own version of a haka almost, and that's just great for the mood for a team, isn't it?
Well, I could say this: during the first part of my career, I worked down in Australia, and had the absolute pleasure to be able to work alongside of a bunch of Kiwis. And there were definitely several times where either at the base or after hours thing or something, and those guys would, without fail, have a couple of drinks in them and would start doing a haka. And it was probably one of the highlights my time down there to be able to see those guys do it, and wishing I knew what it was so I could take part as well. So I could definitely see where initially somebody could be skeptical of that thought philosophy, and then actually revert inward and probably look at it and think, oh wait, this actually could be a really good thing to be able to start off with, and having a logo or brand that says, hey, we are North Shore Platform Team 6 or whatever, and then have their brand and their logo. So it's really interesting to be able to. Are there any other ideas that come to mind that were pushed back on, similarly to the one you just mentioned?
Yeah, there's another one which was, in fact, it's often slightly controversial, and yet after a little while of enrollment, is always appreciated as a hugely valuable tool, and that is video. So we see it so often. There's a resistance to a coach having a video camera and recording operations and activity on the deck. There's a perception that it's going to be used for the wrong reasons. It's going to be used for spying. It's going to be used to pick up on things that go wrong. And of course, that's not the intention at all. The idea is to build up a video library of activities which can then be used for planning and learning, and for sharing and helping new crews to visualize what an activity looks like, especially if they're green hands who haven't done it before. And nothing leaves the rig without the say-so of the leadership team. So it's not about sending footage on the sly. So there's healthy skepticism and resistance to video, and yet after a month or two of performance coaching support, we invariably see project leadership going, right, okay, the light bulb's gone on, the penny's dropped. I understand. Actually, this can really help us visualize how things are done and how we can do things better. So that would be another example for sure.
So you say something great there, like the penny drops or the light bulb comes on. When do you, as a performance coach, can tell that the light bulb really goes off with the client or the team that you're working with?
Well, you need to take stock on a regular basis. So we call them quarterly performance reviews, but regular reviews of how the leading indicators of performance improvement are being embedded, because when you invest in performance coaching support, it requires client leadership 100%. If the client leaders aren't fully behind the initiative, it's going to struggle to get off the ground, as you can appreciate. And so regular reviews to hopefully help the client leaders have some epiphanies or some light bulb moments about how the process is really helping pull the team together. Now, unfortunately, as we know, it's more of a marginal gains type of philosophy than a light bulb moment. Wow, okay, this is amazing. But that's the same with fitness. It's the same as many things, improvement. If you were to look at yourself in the mirror one day to the next, you might say, oh, well, I've been going to the gym, but there's no change. But if you go, okay, there's a picture of me in January, and then you commit to going to the gym for 6 months, and there's a picture of me in July, and you go, wow, I can just see that I've lost 10 kgs of body fat, or I've put on 10 kgs of muscle, or a combination of the two. So
I wish.
Well, whatever's the analogy for each of us. But, the thing is, when you work with a team, you need to actually take a snapshot of where things are at the start, and they can be quite messy. In fact, they invariably are. And then you have to say, give it some time. And this takes time, an improvement initiative. And I talk about this in the book, Accelerating Automatic. You have to be patient. It's a 6 to 18 month journey in reality. And so when you take stock and reference and review after 3 months, 6 months, then you can start to see the difference. And I have then seen drilling supervisors, rig managers, and others who do have a bit of a light bulb moment of realization, particularly if they were resistant to start with. So yeah, it's great to see the conversion of a cynic to a champion of the improvement concept once they've seen it work. It really is. It's nice to see that.
So have you ever had any moments to where, obviously, if something's taking place over a 6 to 18 month time span, obviously new members could be joining a team members could be leaving. Have you seen where you've had a new member join the team and old members who might have been the skeptics at first now become the ambassadors to the mission and try to win over those skeptics that have recently joined the team?
Yeah, many times. It's a great observation of yours there. The strong characters in any team, sports teams, corporate teams, rig teams, the strong characters often tend to be the more resistant initially. And as I say, I quite like that, because I'd much rather that healthy skepticism, which means that there's engagement, than quiet apathy where you think, oh, well, the guys aren't being resistant, but actually they're not being particularly interested or supportive either. So the strong characters often quite resistant. And then as they realize the value and they see how a performance coaching resource can help them realize their potential and achieve their objectives and enroll the rest of the team, they then do become the champions. And I've seen it many times, to answer your question, Dave, where newbies will come on and they are now taking the lead and taking these newbies under their wing and saying, right, this is how we do things around here. We're professional. We take time to plan before every operational phase, to go through the work instruction in detail. We take time afterwards, even if we're tired at the end of a shift, to do an after action review, to make sure we capture the key lessons, so that even if we're away home on our time off, next time we do this particular job, our back-to-backs will benefit from the learning and the improvement that we've implemented, because the governing documents are now updated with a better way of doing things. So the back-to-back comes on board, picks up the work instruction, and it's been updated with a better way of doing things to help them improve. And it's not dissimilar to sports teams. We were talking about rugby earlier on. The British and Irish Lions are getting ready for their tour of South Africa to meet the Springboks, who are the world champions, having won the World Cup in 2019 in Japan. And nowadays in professional rugby and in many professional sports, it's so tough that you have to have basically a second team. You basically need a squad that's big enough. And I'm sure it's the same in NFL and many sports, where because of the attrition and injury and the pace of the game, you need to have a backup for each position. And so knowledge sharing and the application of lessons learning is applicable, because you want your backup, your contingency, to basically be able to step up and know that they're armed with all the information they need to be successful. And it's the same in a sort of performance-oriented operation. You want those strong characters on each shift to be making sure that they've done everything possible to not only set themselves up for success, but to set the other shift, the other team up for success too.
So the interesting question from my perspective, obviously, understanding the offshore environment, and you've got field personnel, and then you've also got, office personnel. Which do you see usually picks up the change and really pushes forward with it the quickest?
Great question. Invariably, it's the field team that has the resource, in my experience. So you typically have the performance coach on the rig helping the frontline team implement the disciplines. So what happens is you then get a bit of a tsunami of learning, of lessons that start coming towards the onshore team. And that's where you really need the office-based team to step up, because the frontline team has now invested their time and energy in this initiative. They've done the disciplines of planning and learning, and they're now starting to capture what could be improved. And they need the help of their leaders onshore to really step up and help identify what solutions are needed. They might be engineering solutions, So there might be mechanical solutions, they might be process solutions, they might be people solutions, but they're going to need that onshore office team to step up to the plate and help them and come up with ideas onshore to help solve the problems that the frontline teams are facing. So it really does become a team effort, a project team effort that relies on those at the front line, but those in support positions to really work together. And unfortunately, where I've seen some project teams struggle is where that front line team invests the effort and then basically puts their hand up and says to the office team, right, we now need your support, and they don't get it. And then that's really sad because morale starts to suffer because the frontline team goes, well, why should we put the effort in if we're not getting any support? So when we're supporting organizations, we always say, right, the readiness to execute is so important. And a part of that is making sure that the office team understands that soon enough, once the frontline team gets going on the execute phase of a project, there's going to be learning that's coming through, and the office team needs to support and help and be there for that team in order for everyone to improve and to maintain that level of morale that's going to be needed to keep the level of belief in the process alive. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
So obviously we don't want to see teams regress, but if that office team is not there ready and prepared to be able to give support to the changes that have taken place in the remote locations, it doesn't even have to so much be the field, across different industries. It could be applied to just whoever's working remotely. Is that could that be one of the big killers of a project or of a, essentially a cultural change within the team?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of things spring to mind. I mean, continuity, particularly at a leadership level, is a key success factor. And we've seen that with sports teams, like, for example, the New England Patriots with Belichick and Brady before Brady moved on. That continuity at the top was one of the reasons that franchise was so successful for so long. So continuity is important. It's the same with upstream teams. Continuity is important. And with continuity, that attention to the culture, that never-ending focus on maintaining the culture. And we talked about the All Blacks earlier in rugby. That legacy which is handed down from one group to another, and which is maintained by the leadership group, the coaches and the captain and the senior players. It's similar to an upstream oil and gas project, or pretty much any project team. The leader group has a responsibility to keep their eye on the ball and to make sure that the culture of support and of mutual support is maintained, and that attention is placed on how morale, the pulse of morale. There needs to be a constant awareness of how things are going, how people are feeling, and that's been really relevant during this COVID period, hasn't it? Because there's been anxiety and uncertainty about work, about health, about safety. Travel and quarantine has introduced additional points of anxiety and concern, and so it's never been more important for the leadership group, both in the office and at the front line, to work together to pay attention to how people are feeling. And to maintaining standards and maintaining awareness about how the team is doing. And you touched, David, on churn, where you might be losing experience, or you might be bringing in inexperience. Again, it's critical that awareness is placed on that, and if necessary, we slow down to speed up. So sometimes it's a timeout. We've got a lot of inexperience. There's a risk that if we rush things will go wrong. So because of the inexperience, we may need to take a timeout, step back, ensure that the levels of competence are where they need to be before continuing on. There's a lot to be considered, as we know.
So once you've completed, kind of the journey with the team, what are some of the final words that you give them to make sure that teams don't regress? And then what are some of the top two things that sometimes happen after there's been a successful mentorship or successful, training, and then you've stepped away? What are some of the things that have happened to where you go back and you're like, right here, guys, we talked about this?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question, because of course, a coaching value proposition is all about a finite period of time to help raise the standards, raise the game, and then step back. So we talk about showing the team the way, guiding them in the proven disciplines of accelerated improvement and high performance, and then stepping back so that it becomes internally sustainable to maintain that. What I've seen is perhaps a lack of appreciation of the hard work that's involved. So unless, as I said earlier, you delegate, nominate one resource within the organization who's going to be fully accountable for continuous improvement.
Like you mentioned earlier, yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, yeah, then it can fall away. The other thing that we always say is that continuity at a leadership level is critical for this to continue. So if there's continuity, then the leaders understand what's required in order for a high level of performance to be maintained. If there's been churn at a leadership level and you've got new leaders coming in, and then the support for the performance improvement initiative is also stepping away, it's highly likely that that initiative will fall away. So probably the two key things are continuity at the top and nominating a resource, even if it's within the organization, that is fully accountable for the disciplines of improvement. And that would be, for example, planning, after action review, regular discussion about lessons learned, but also the recognition side of things, making sure that the team is recognized. So we do something called, a newsletter or success stories to really tell the story of what's happening at the front line to the wider stakeholder community. Again, the intangibles, the softer side, making sure that people are recognized and that the human element is sustained. Otherwise, you lose the hearts and you're just focused on the minds. And it's got to be hearts and minds in order for these projects to succeed.
So it's interesting you say that, because when I think about this, I'm thinking about like this team's going forward, and all of a sudden, now they've got a logo, they've got a name, they've got a slogan, they've got some rituals. But not only do they have that internally to themselves, but also they need to be able to have essentially a marketing person to be able to get that out there to the wider stakeholders. Is there also a need for almost like a sales force for somebody to be able to go out there and sell this to the rest of the organization, to be able to say, like, hey, marketing's done the job. Now when I go over here and talk to HR's heard about it. Now I can go over here and sell them on trying to do similar things, because, a highly effective team that's pushing forward and having great results, obviously now may start to see other verticals within the organization. They're like, hey, I really wish the HR department would do what we just did.
Yeah, I have seen that actually. It can be contagious. Success is contagious. So yeah, it's probably sales is probably not the right word, but you're right. It's about convincing. It's about convincing and converting. We talk about engagement and enrollment at the beginning of a project, and the first thing that we consider to be very important is to listen to those that are involved. Make no assumptions that we understand what problems are. Actually ask the workforce, because they're the ones that genuinely know where the problems are, where the gaps are, where the opportunities are. So part of the engagement and enrollment period is to listen to the workforce and then replay what you think you've heard, just to check that that's accurate. But having done that and enrolled the team in the initiative, there's definitely a conversion and convincing period where it's important to share the story with the wider organization. And then, Dave, you then sometimes find that, say there's more than one rig working for an operator, and one rig has got support and one hasn't. We have seen it before where they say, hey, what about us? We could do with some support. We also want our story to be told. So yeah, there's a little bit of that.
getting somebody a little left out and make them want to jump on pretty quick.
Yeah.
So obviously I want to plug the books a little bit more. So give me a run through on each of the 4 books that, and these are all self-published, correct?
Yeah, these are all self-published. So yeah, my aim going forward now is to get the last one, Accelerating Automatic, through a traditional publisher as well, because I've had really good feedback on that.
Well, best of luck with that, by the way.
No, thank you. Thanks very much indeed. And thank you for this opportunity as well to discuss these books. So all self-published, Dave, yeah. So Inspired, Inspired 2, and Inspired Again. Those were basically weekly insights, which I turned into, 52 chapters each, insights from performance coaching.
So that was a 3 years straight.
Yeah. Yeah. 3 years in a row. Yeah.
So is a part of the one of the books talk about consistency? Because good gosh, that is some, I mean, that's what it really takes to be, I mean, wow. I'm blown. Wow. That is something right there. So sorry, go ahead.
I appreciate that. No, it's very kind of you. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think that's the amazing thing about it is, other people have said, wow, that's like over 150 chapters or articles that you had to do there. And it didn't feel like hard work. It was true flow. I really felt like flow. Once I felt that I knew the idea I wanted to share that week, I would almost attract to myself some of the ideas and thoughts that I wanted to share about that topic. And then once I got into writing it, it often kind of ran away a bit, and I had to kind of sort of condense it a bit more into a digestible chapter. So, if you're passionate about performance, people and process, and you're inspired by the human spirit and human achievement, there's actually no shortage of material. And given the digital age that we live in now, Dave, as you well know, there's so many stories that you can come across on a daily basis, speaking to people, our experiences in life, and then what you read about, what you watch on TV. You're basically providing your perspective on that story, and your lens, your filter is based on what you're passionate about. So if I watched a Super Bowl, for example, and I was inspired by the way the coach and the captain worked together to achieve that success, I would offer my thoughts on based on what I'd read and heard and seen on how that came about, and how that could be a metaphor for other teams, or what learnings could be applied elsewhere. And so, yeah, so that 3 years, those 3 books, the Inspired series, was just a great opportunity to just dump as I felt inspired. I wasn't trying to organize under a sort of umbrella topic. I was just going, right, what's hit me this week as inspirational? Let me get it down. And it started off really experiences supporting rig teams. By the 3rd year, it was actually stepping back and saying, what enables high performance in any industry, and how can we just share it and learn from it? And then, as I say, the 4th book, Accelerating Automatic, I thought, right, okay, I've now got like 150 plus chapters of my experience as a performance coach. How is it now time to perhaps look at all of these chapters and say, how can I organize these into a logical guide for either a practitioner, another performance coach, or a leader, a project leader who's embarking on a drilling campaign or a project in any industry, and is looking for a little bit of an aid memoir for what to consider. And in that, I actually proffered a model, which quite a simple model, which is mindset, method, and mood. And mindset is all about leadership, and it's about performance belief, and it's about purpose, and it's about setting objectives, and it's about applying a growth mindset. Method is actually your management system. And a simple reference for method is kind of marginal gains methodology, just like British cycling. When David Brailsford came in to British cycling in 2003, Britain had 1 medal in cycling for 100 years. he applied a marginal gains philosophy, which was all about those 1% improvements in everything that you do. And the UK then had, Great Britain had something like 15 medals at the next two Olympics and won 6 Tour de France winners medals over 7 years.
I remember reading something about this. This was like to the point where he was telling everybody, like he told the cyclists how to wash their hands properly, just to be able to keep from getting sick, so that they could train more. It was like, I mean, he was looking at like the infinitesimal, like the tiniest little things that we take for granted on a day-to-day basis, but it was like making sure that they had like the best pillows, the best sheets, the best beds to sleep on. It was like, I mean, obviously normally with the athletes, it's about, getting rest, getting, food and nutrition, and then, doing the proper training. But it was like, those were like the 3, standard things that they looked at. But then to be able to do to be 1% better, to be 1/10 of a second faster, he was like, all right, we now have to wash our hands better. And it was like, that was something to me. I remember reading that and just being like that, if you get to train one day more than the competition because you're not sick, then that makes sense.
Well, that's right.
So it's very interesting you bring up that story.
Yeah, no, absolutely, spot on. And then technically, they would look at the bike, and it's like, how could they make the bike more aerodynamic if they could take 1 gram off the weight of the bike when you extend that to a race of thousands of kilometers. Every gram that you can reduce in the weight of the bike is going to make a difference. So they looked at everything, and it paid dividends. It got results. So, every organization will kind of have a management system, but really the methodology is around improvement. It's around learning, and there are different nuances that you can bring. But in totality, it's that kind of philosophy. The other one is mood, and this one for me, it came when I spoke to a friend who runs a company called Performance Climate Systems, and they do kind of surveys of organizational teams to get a sense of the performance climate. And in his 2-pager, he compared culture to personality. It's difficult to change someone's personality. It's difficult to change the culture of an organization overnight or in a short space of time. But climate is like mood, and we can influence people's mood quite quickly. That's about leadership behavior, leadership language. You can turn the mood around in a room by being positive and by sensing the atmosphere, being empathetic, motivating and inspiring people based on how they are. And so that really grabbed me. That was a light bulb moment for me, was comparing performance climate to mood. And so when I looked at this model of mindset, method, and mood, or mood set, as I like to call it, it's like, if you can pay attention to the atmosphere, to the performance climate, to the way the team is feeling, to morale, and you can lift the mood and stay above the line. So be hopeful rather than hopeless. Inspire the team. If you can keep an eye on that, those are some of the more successful teams. Or if you can go into a campaign, those are the successful leaders who are really paying attention to not only the mindset, but the mood set. So not only the heads, but the hearts as well. So because if you can win the hearts of men, you can win any battle, as many a philosopher has said. And so it's actually, and we see this with sports teams, when they embark on campaigns or seasons, more and more time now is invested in pulling the team together, team building activities, learning about the individuals involved, making people feel heard or psychologically safe, a space for being vulnerable, emotionally bought in to the season or to the campaign. So there's more and more awareness of the importance of mood. But I think it's only in the last sort of 5-10 years that project leaders in the heavy industries have realized its significance. Before, it was given lip service.
Well, Tim, thank you so much. We're hitting the end here. Any last words of wisdom from you?
Just thank you, David, for the opportunity, and thank you for the great questions. And we're all here to learn. I'm on a steep learning journey myself, so it's great to be inspired and to read about what other leaders are doing to master success. So thanks for this opportunity, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Well, if you need any words of wisdom from me, it's fail on live streaming. Just keep doing it. Just keep failing, and eventually, eventually it will turn around for you, and things will start working for you. Tim, thanks so much for coming and being a part of this. I really do appreciate it. Absolutely amazing. Much love to the Exceed guys. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the managed pressure drilling event that we had last week.
Yes.
That was a huge success for, I hope, everybody in the industry to be able to learn more about managed pressure drilling and all the companies and organizations out there that are doing it. I think it's a very integral part of our industry and definitely moving forward. So much success to you, obviously with your CrossFit stuff, as well as with the company and with getting the book published. Let us know when the book does get picked up by a publisher. We'll come back and we'll do this all over again.
You're a legend. Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate what you do, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
Take
sir.
care.
All right, guys. Next up on the bill here, we've got an absolutely amazing individual. If you have not heard of this person, wow, we are going just back to back right here. Really excited about this. We've still got plenty of people watching. Like the view numbers on Amazon are beating what I'm doing on LinkedIn any day of the week right now. And I don't know if I should be depressed about that or pretty excited. It is Amazon Prime Day after all. So anyways, the next person that we're bringing up, I found this person, I guess, by random on LinkedIn. Watched, I think it's about like a minute 15 video, and it was absolutely hilarious. Hilarious to me because I do run a data company, and I completely understood what he was talking about. I'm not going to spoil it. I'll ask him to be able to talk about it when he comes on. But before I do, obviously, I got to do this. I hate to do this because it's like I know he's waiting here for me. Give me just a second, Scott. I want to make sure we get your book put up here. So once again, we are live streaming on Amazon. And nope, that's not what I wanted. I need to come back. Oh, come on. The app that they have us use is not the best. So telling your data story, let's put that one up at number 1. There we go. Then click back. And then it should, I'll recycle this over here. Recycle the pumps. Boop, boop, boop. That way the guest that we have on matches with the book that's in the thing. All right, y'all, let me know where y'all are watching from. If you are enjoying this, please hit the follow button. If you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, please do. So also connect with the guests that we have coming on here. We just finished with Tim Wigham. Prior to that was David Ramsden-Wood. David Ramsden-Wood did the book, What the F is Wrong with Everybody Else? And then Tim's book series, The Inspired Series. Great group of books, obviously you just heard. And then now we have up on the bill, Mr. Scott Taylor.
Hey, everybody. Hey, David, how are you? Good to see you. Nice to be here. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time to be to take part in this. I really do appreciate it. I know that you are a busy man doing tons of speaking engagements, lots of stuff here. You've got, I don't know how many of your own podcasts or podcasts that you're a part of. You've also got a book. Thank you for taking the time. There we go.
There we go.
I don't have a copy. I don't have a copy, but
there we go. Sure, you bet. No, happy to do this. This is what I do. Doing content out there, sharing my thoughts, engaging with folks, both sides of the mic, if you will, on the podcast side, videos, as you mentioned, white papers, and puppet shows. So I've got a pretty wide range. Keynotes and cartoons. It's always all talking about the same thing. The strategic importance of proper data management. If you work at an enterprise, you've got enterprise data. And if you got enterprise data, it's got to be managed. Otherwise, the things you want to do with your business are not going to happen at scale.
Okay. So I have a little bit of an understanding of your background. But for those who don't know who you are, give us that rundown. Give us their background and how did you get to where you are today, being called the Data Whisperer?
So Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer, help calm data down. We help tame data in the data management space. Every data management manager out there is some form of data whisperer. But spoiler alert, in person, I don't do a lot of whispering. I've been selling, yelling, and telling about the value of proper data management for almost 30 years in one way or another. Started off working for some of the most iconic data companies on earth. Nielsen, where I learned pretty much the basics about everything I know about data and master data and managing data. Dun & Bradstreet, where I tried to help them get their story straight about what they do in the master data space. Consulted for a whole bunch of companies and now do just content. I'm now fortunate enough at this point in my career to be doing literally only the stuff I liked the best. And it's a blast. So kind of work my way to a point where I can just do that. But every story I tell is about why managing data is so important for an enterprise.
Well, the way that I found you was there was a short video clip that ended with 7-Eleven.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying not to give away the whole thing. I mean, I wish I could just like pull up the video because it's an absolutely amazing video.
Yeah, we could pop. I've sent you the link there. It's on YouTube. Anybody interested, just look for Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer on YouTube. You'll find about 50 videos on there. But it was an example of bad data. And people like to talk about bad data. They like to talk about data quality. It's always in this very conceptual, ethereal way. I find it very emotional, very subjective. So you got to show people what you're talking about. And this example I use is a 20-year-old slide at the very least, probably more than that.
Wow.
Where I show one organization's 275 different ways they spell the retailer 7-Eleven. Sometimes this, sometimes two numbers, sometimes 7 plus 11, 7 equals 11, not in base 10, it doesn't, but they put it in there anyway. The store name in there, the store number, pound, periods, all these kind of configurations. And in that classic phrase, garbage in, garbage out, this is what the garbage in looks like. And so when you put that kind of crap in your system, and your business people wonder why they can't figure out what they're doing with 7-Eleven, that kind of inconsistent, unharmonized, unstructured data is part of the reason. It's not about the software. And I think in that example, that couple minutes video you saw, I say, well, and the software doesn't fix it on its own, because if you put 7-Eleven in Excel, you get July 11th, and that doesn't help. Unless you're in Europe and you get November 7th, so we can't even get a consistent understanding of what 7-Eleven means across two continents. But it's just a way to continue to illustrate in hopefully a humorous but effective, pointed way that you've got to manage data before you start getting too far off into analytics and artificial intelligence and machine learning and all the cool, sexy stuff that everybody talks about. You don't have this, you don't have the goods going in, you're not going to get the value coming out.
So with, you say one of the buzzwords there, which is artificial intelligence. Hear about this all the time. How much of that is just hope dreams for some companies who haven't taken the time to be able to do the other portion of it correctly?
If you don't do that portion, you don't set up the data correctly, then you are completely wasting your time in AI. You're welcome to quote me on that. I say, you put bad data into AI, you get AS, artificial stupidity. It doesn't do what you want it to do. And these data scientists out there may work on some kind of project and a proof of concept or some form of petri dish where everything is perfect. But if you want it to scale, if you want to operationalize it, which is where true value comes from in an enterprise, you got to get that foundation built first. That's why they call it a foundation. These are terms that people use that make sense no matter what part of the business you're in. You can't build a house on a bad foundation. Just these constant parables and cliches we use to reinforce the need to manage your data correctly.
Funny how those actually correlate and make sense.
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of stuff we talk about does it make sense? But if you think about the terms people use in the master data, so I'm from that part, right? Master data, reference data, metadata, MDM, RDM, PIM, DAM. These are the, TLAs that people use around to describe the foundational activities, those data management activities that feed all the other parts of an enterprise, and certainly feed everything that goes on in analytics and business intelligence. They don't call master, they don't talk about, they don't use, bell and whistle. They don't use, sprinkles on the sundae. They, that great, that's great. Linchpin, backbone, foundation, glue, what these kind of connective sort of metaphors and similes that should be able to engender in the ears of the listener why this is so important. But we got to keep, I'm trying to help lead the charge there to keep pounding away at this, because the data management side of the space is inherently boring. It's filled with
you're making it a lot better.
Who are great but get way too technical. And I challenge them constantly. It's why I wrote the book. Literally, why I wrote the book was spending my career talking to all these frustrated data managers and data leaders who knew the value of what they were trying to do, but had trouble breaking through to the business side to explain that value, to get the funding they need, to get the support they need. And my premise was, you got to tell a better data story about why managing your data is so important. Really simple from my perspective. Hopefully it helps.
So why do you think it's like, obviously you've been in this space for, like you said, 30 years, right?
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, but who's counting?
Why
pre-2K for sure. I'm definitely a pre-2K veteran, as I like to call it.
Why is this still an ongoing problem when, it seems like a fairly obvious thing to be able to just get, data validation entry correct at the get-go?
It's like the riddle of the Sphinx here, technically. I don't know why we have to keep talking about it this way. People ask me, what are the trends you see? What's new coming up? I say, from where I look, I just keep seeing the same thing, which is if the data's not right, none of this other stuff works. And we're, to a degree, we suffer from our own buzz. People are trying to make things sound exciting. They add new terminology. They add new spin to it. Again, the output of data is something people can see. You can see analytics. You can see a chart. You can see a graph. You can see a result happen based on an insight. You don't see what goes into that. So those things tend to get way much more attention. That's where data ends up. But you've got to remind people, it's got to start somewhere. So I live over where data starts, that validation, that structuring, that those early activities to make sure that content is stewarded and governed properly, and it can do the things people want to try and do. But it's still a challenge. Why aren't we all healthy and eating right and exercising every day and making sure we read lots of, classic novels rather than trashy paperback, whatever it is, because
the whole paradox of why doesn't everybody floss their teeth? We all know that we're supposed to, but why doesn't everybody do it?
There's some unfortunate similarities to all that kind of stuff. And then you don't then you get a heart attack, not to trivialize anybody's personal, just talking metaphorically. And all of a sudden you get new religion on eating right and all the rest of it. Well, that's what happens. Somebody gets a data breach. Somebody gets fined by the regulators. Somebody blows a customer relationship because the data they had didn't give them the right understanding of that relationship. There's a little flashpoint that says, all right, we got to fix this at the source. And, software doesn't fix it on its own. Everything demos beautifully because the data in the demo is perfect. Once you put your own stuff in it, does it work? So I took it upon myself to kind of be one of the louder voices in the space that is trying to bring some focus to it. Another reason, to go on and on, is that our partners, if you look at the data space, I think of it as kind of two big buckets. You've got data management and you've got business intelligence. And in data management, you have all those things that I mentioned, MDM, RDM, master data, reference data, and so on. In business intelligence, you've got AI, ML, data science, visualization, analytics. I call data management determining the truth. Business intelligence is deriving meaning. It's not chicken or egg here. You got to do truth first before you do meaning. Hence the meaning of my truth hat. I'm obviously on that team. So try to kind of separate that for folks. But a lot of the business intelligence people will at times even denigrate the value of data that hasn't been put through their wonderful process. They'll say things like, data's worthless until I turn it into analytics. Or we're not trying, it's not about the data, it's about the insight. It's not about the insight, it's about the wisdom. You go on this sort of hierarchy thing. I listen to that and I wonder why they need to be almost adversarial and competitive with their peers, that actually everything that those business intelligence folks do is dependent on the quality of the work that the data management people can produce. So this zero-sum game of data's worthless until we put analytics on it. I never heard a baker stand up and say, flour's worthless until I make it into bread. They don't say that. They respect the ingredients. So in all my litany of reasons why data management isn't getting the credit and attention that it's due, one of them is the analytics folks pick on it all the time. And they shouldn't. I don't see a reason for that. Business people hear us bicker about it, and all they know is that they're arguing about something that has to do with data and analytics. They don't even see a difference. So why do we make a difference where there is no difference? And why do we have to prove one point by diminishing the work of another part of your own organization? So there's my little soapbox rant about analytics folks sometimes.
Well, so I've got the question because I'm obviously a data company myself. We get the data, and for lack of better words, because I know that you'll probably end up educating me on stuff that I should probably be doing with my company. Get the data, get everything prepped and ready, and then be able to do, like you said, put it into a visualization, and then demonstrate that for our clients, and then send it out to them. When a company is getting started, whether it's big, small, whether it's in the data space or not, at what point in time do you think the company should be looking at how they take in data, how they record their data, how they just start to be able to build what is going to be their database, their data set? When do you think that should take place? When should that conversation take place for a startup company?
Once they become what somebody might consider an enterprise, that's the level that things really start to get out of control. If you're I don't have a data management system. I'm a two-person shop. I talk about it all the time, but I don't have a lot of data to manage. But once you're an enterprise, and we can debate about what the lower level of that threshold is, number of employees, number of systems, number of countries, whatever. But if you bought Salesforce and SAP and Oracle, and you got a fintech system, and you'll have lots and lots of multiple systems, multiple departments, disparate data. You don't have common definitions. You don't have an internal standard. It's hard for you to roll up these reports. So that enterprise level, if you're investing in, I would even suggest more than one enterprise system, you've got to have a more formal data management process in place to make sure those systems can share the same kind of content.
Because it's interesting to me, because I have, in the industry that I'm a part of, the oil and gas industry, there's a lot of small oil field service companies. And in the supply chain that is oil field service, dealing with operators of the large oil and gas companies, more times than not, the oilfield service company has more experience in their particular area than does the operator who's paying for those services.
Sure.
And it's because they're not doing just work for just that one client. They're doing work for multiple clients. So they may be on 20 drill sites, whereas the operator's on 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've seen in my career, and have told, I want to say I'm a data expert by any means, but the consulting that I've done, I've told these companies is like, the reason why you're not better than you are is because you're not capturing the data that you're doing for the activities and the services that you're providing, and you're relying more so on the data from the operator, which is the bigger company, may be that enterprise level company who's taking everything in and processing it and doing it. And because you're the smaller company and you see yourself as a smaller company, you're not looking at everything across the board and then taking learning experiences from 20 different spots. All you're doing is just saying, this is all we've learned for this one particular client, and this is all we can do here. And so you're shortchanging yourself. Are you seeing that as well in other areas that you consult, or other, maybe smaller venture companies?
I would say that situation is pretty familiar, and that your advice to those kinds of companies is the right kind of advice. They've got to start capturing this in some way, and do it at the foundation, do it at the simplest level. If you're on 20 sites and those are 20 customers, then things by customer. That's the easiest way to cut it, the easiest dimension. But there's who knows how many attributes and characteristics about those sites, about the equipment, about the activity, about the service. Find some way to stratify that and structure that so you can get some pretty standard reporting out of it across these different types of activities. Wouldn't it be nice to know, using widget or process X, we saw this kind of result, and that's based on 20 inputs that have a whole bunch of different kinds of geographic characteristics because the wells are different. I'm making this up as I go along, David, but just the idea of that. Would you like to see a nice, chart and graph about that? Of course. Well, if the data is not structured correctly, you're not going to. I talk about this idea of the 4 C's of master data. It's the basic, most bedrock, foundational way to think about data structuring, which can get really complicated.
It is.
And these 4 C's are code, company, category, and country. So the idea is on master data, on your master data, or your, the data about your customers. On every customer record, you have a unique code. You have some sort of parent-child relationship because most customers have some form of hierarchy structure. You have a category, so you know what kind of thing it is. And you have, just because they all start with C, you have a country or some form of geography. And if you have that kind of foundational pieces on your data, then you will know where everything is, what it is, who owns it, and that it's unique. And the amount of data problems that go away are, almost uncalculable when you think about the issues that people have with reporting and integration and identification. They've got duplicates, they've got bad hierarchies, they didn't know this thing was related to that thing. They have a category structure and they roll up their stuff and they find out that second biggest category is called other because nobody put anything in there. Only when I saw it wasn't other. They had a category attribute DK and we asked them what that stood for and they said, don't know. So and then, there's sales markets, there's media markets, there's measurement markets, there's all different kinds of market definitions and configurations. And you don't get that right. There's all, leadership wants to know how many things do we have, who owns them, where are they, and what are they? You can't figure out how you're doing until you have that basic census, that basic topology of your data landscape, to use a metaphor here, done. You won't know where you won't know what you've got. It's all I ever talk about.
So when you do start working with somebody, what is it, the 4 C's? Is that like the very first thing you do? What's the starting off point to being able to help an organization get their data right?
I'm about the why, not the how. I'm not a
Okay.
practitioner. I don't get my hands, on the data. You don't want me to. I talk at the conceptual and sometimes even at the symbolic level. Why is this important? How do you talk about it to your CEO? If you had a minute, 5 minutes to talk about why data management is so important to your CEO, how would you approach it? How are you, and I try and hear that from folks. And it's usually, well, our data quality is really terrible, or, data is the new oil, or, we have so much data everywhere. There's tweets and Facebook posts and all the rest of it. And you're talking to a company that's not even, that's not even relevant. I work to focus people on creating a data story about data management in their organization that will capture the hearts and minds of their leadership at hopefully an emotional level. Your previous speaker there, Tim, I was loving what he was talking about feeling it. You got to feel it. That gets people's minds changed. I don't know a single CEO of an organization that gets up and says, one of our top priorities this year, I'm putting in the annual report, is we need to improve our data quality. It's like they just don't even think about that. And nor should they. So many of the things that organization wants to do are based on having better data to do it. So you got to connect those two kind of often unconnected ideas. What are you doing in data management? Why is it enabling the strategic intentions of your enterprise? Where's your company trying to go? What do your leaders say they want to get done? They're not going to talk about data quality. They're not going to talk about APIs. They're not going to talk about data stewardship. They're going to talk in some way or another about how they want to deliver value to their relationships through their brands at scale. And that at scale part is where data comes in. Can't do things at scale without data. It just doesn't happen.
So what can a company accomplish when they've got these things right and you say they can go at scale? What's a good example there of, what they were missing before and where they can go
a good example of it
future?
Working is the platform we're on. Amazon is built off of highly structured, well-managed, expertly stewarded master data, reference data, metadata. Look at every item on Amazon. It has a unique code. It has a category structure. It has an ownership structure. There's all kinds of geography behind the scenes. They have a code number called an ASIN, the Amazon something item number, I think it is.
Yeah.
I should remember what ASIN stands for. But it's similar to the UPC, right? Universal Product Code.
I think it's Amazon specific item number.
Yeah, it's Amazon. Okay. The reason that they have
I was
their
watching
own
a video
number
the other day. That's why I know.
is because they cover more things than anybody, almost anybody. So there wasn't an existing standard that they could leverage. UPCs don't cover everything. So to be sold in Amazon, they require that. I don't know how that number's assigned. Amazon wouldn't work without that data structure. Uber wouldn't work. Airbnb, name any of the classic disruptors out there. None of that stuff works unless they've got this highly structured master data, reference data, metadata underneath. It's truly the skeleton, the nuts and bolts, the structural piece that everything else hangs on.
So what about in instances like specifically within my industry, oil and gas, there are a multiple number of movements to be able to get data uniformly across multiple companies, not just within a singular company, but across multiples. How do we even go about solving a problem like that? Because I don't even know how to ask the right question. There's so many different thoughts and there's nonprofit organizations, there's industry. I don't even know what you would call it.
There's a group called PODS. Do you know PODS? PODS? It's a standard.
No.
Petroleum Oil Distribution. I did an event for them
So I know of WITSML, OSDU. There's WITS. There was WITS 2.0, WITSML 2.0, Prod DML, Intergist. Like I haven't done anything with pods. Most of my stuff that I know is about like the upstream when drilling and stuff's taking place. But all of us want to be able to have our products talk to one another and do things correctly. How do we make mess of that? Or how do we make
everybody wants to see things one way? They all want to see things one way, their way. There's a certain amount of release you have to give to say, okay, a standard allows us to interoperate. If you want to interoperate, you got to set a standard. You got to release some of your control of certain parts of the data space to an independent third party, to just adhering to a common standard. There's not a single industry where standards do not accelerate that industry. And there's plenty of standards in your, the beauty of standards, there's so many to choose from. But there's a standard out there. Whatever industry you're in, there's a standard. Look at it, figure it out, see how you can leverage it. Standards bodies, in my experience, tend to think they're going to be the only way. That's a flaw in their logic. Very few organizations that I know of take a true external industry standard and operationalize that as their internal standard because it doesn't fit their business functions the way it should. So you need some sort of link to it. That's the work I did at Nielsen, was help create what became a de facto standard for store locations, store identification. So all these manufacturers and their service providers across a variety of different categories, anybody who's trying to help somebody get something into a supermarket, we had already an existing database that uniquely numbered every supermarket. The really fun part of the story was rebranding it and repositioning it as a standard that people could use for identification rather than just an internal code number that, just happens to be on the database. Unique opportunity, but there's lots of places out there. Any organization that has a third-party data provider that has some sort of universe definition, has hierarchies that they maintain independently, has some form of categorization that reflects the industry that you're in, run to them and see how much they can help you. Because if you do it on your own, the flip side is, if you're keeping track of every store on your own, if you're keeping track of every well that people are operating in and the well operators and the distributors and all the different parts of your industry, and it's not adding value to what you do, then go find somebody to help you do it. Because there are very few organizations that I've found that are actually in the data business. They make lots and lots of data. They manage a tremendous amount of data about these very foundational things, yet they're not in the data business. Like, what are you doing that for? Go find somebody who does this better for you. It's not your business. So you probably sit in the middle of a lot of kinds of data. There might be opportunities there for you. But data, that's why Nielsen's so powerful, right? Nielsen sits in the middle. They've got definitions that people all agree with or use as a currency or use as a nomenclature to talk to each other. So those things all have functional value. And you can't create a language between parties by yourself. The other parties have to speak it. It's
so go ahead. Don't let me interrupt. I know you're on a roll here.
You interrupt me there, so go ahead. Yeah.
So one of the other things you mentioned earlier is people who say data is the new oil. Being in the oil and gas industry, it always makes me kind of chuckle a little bit. And it's like, well, I mean, it's a bit of a reach there. I would love to be able to hear your take on just that cliched saying.
I hate it. It's bad poetry. The reason it's bad poetry The reason
bad
people use
poetry.
it is to try, and it really, whether you think it's a good simile or it's a metaphor, and people are arguing about it. Well, data is not renewable. It's renewable. It doesn't pollute like oil does, or it needs to be refined. That's why that metaphor is good. And so data, once it's refined and distributed, it has value. People are backing into all these definitions of what that comment means. And the modern version of that comment, which came out as a headline in an article by The Economist, a few years ago. And the headline was, the most valuable resource in the world today is not oil, it's data, which doesn't really say data is the new oil. And people use this graphic. I have it in the book. People use this graphic and put it on the front page of a presentation about data value. The point of the presentation is we should all get more value out of our data. They use this big headline. It's not oil, it's data. The subhead of that is about how the internet giants control the distribution of data, and there should be potential antitrust and regulations. So if you even read the subhead of this article, it's not a positive article about data. So why are you using it? Use things that help support your story. If you have to spend 5 minutes explaining your metaphor, then it's a bad metaphor. We're not talking about figuring out
if you have to explain the joke, the joke's not funny anymore.
Yeah, I mean, poetry's poetry. It's like, okay, it's, we're not it's not a James Joyce class in Finnegan's Wake where we're trying to, unwrap these literary conundrums and what did this allusion mean and what did that reference mean. We're talking about, you're in a business meeting with your board, you open up, data's the new oil, and somebody goes, what does that mean? And you spend 5 minutes. Well, see, it's really positive. Somebody goes, well, isn't that article something? You're off the tracks already. So say no to didn't know simply because it doesn't fit the purpose that you're using it for. It doesn't help you explain it clearly. Now, in your business,
you have an acronym for it.
Didn't know. You could, in your business, in the oil business, you could say confidently, data in our organization is like oil. It needs to be refined. It's a lubricant. It's an energy source. It allows things, and then just leave it there. Leave it light and sweet on a analogy. If you work in the food business, then don't talk about how data is the oil. I'm actually doing a presentation for a bakery company, rather large manufacturer, and it seemed pretty easy to me. I'm flour, baking, sandwich, right? You want a sandwich. All the salespeople want to do is they want to symbolically, we want to create a wonderful sandwich. That's the experience we want our customers to have. Okay, sandwich without bread is no sandwich. You can't make bread unless you've got flour. The sandwich are the results. All of these systems, that's your baking process. But if you don't have the right ingredients, you're not going to get that end result. And it's literally like 3 pictures in a row to explain what I feel is the strategic importance of data at this organization. One of the tips I put in the book and I talk about all the time is if you want to try and create this data story for data management, leverage your own organization's positioning, marketplace, analogies. Don't start from scratch. Don't borrow somebody else's. I had a guy from a tobacco company actually talk to me about how data was the air for his organization. Breathing in fresh air and why you need, proper air. I'm like, no, okay, no, not for this group. I don't think that's the right way to go. Let's try something else. So it's amazing how people stumble into it, though. A healthy organization has healthy. Okay, that's good if you're healthcare. It's not good if you're in tobacco. It's going to kind of separate. So it's all about, as I say, I'm about what people.
And he
about.
probably worked on that for a good couple of nights, and that's what he came up with. He's like, I've got it.
No, doesn't work. But you want people to feel differently about it. One of my heroes, and I sort of thought of this when Tim was talking. One of my big storytelling heroes is Don Draper, Mad Men. What he did at work, not what he did at home, if you're familiar with that series. Home was a different experience, but at work, he was an ace storyteller. Nobody could pitch like Don Draper. And the essence of every one of his pitches, if you go back and watch him, the Kodak Carousel one, Lucky Strike, there's a whole series of them that he does. It isn't about the product. It's about how it makes you feel. Some version of that. You've got to brand your data management initiative at your company so people will feel good about it, will feel differently about it, to create an emotional connection. And that's where branding comes in. Branding is about that emotional part. The product is the deliverable. When you market something, you want to have both brands in your heart, products in your cart, is my pithy little thing. And
so it's almost like taking the data management team and giving them a good marketing lesson. And
exactly.
Marketing lesson specifically to their vertical that they're going to end up telling internally to the team.
Exactly. They're, in some cases, putting together a whole internal marketing program. Part of what I try to do to get these folks going is saying, you're competing for funding. There's only a defined pie. You're going up against really good storytellers in your organization, like the folks in marketing, who are also looking for money, like the folks in sales, who, if they can't tell a story, they don't make quota. So the best storytellers you got in your organization are salespeople. The data management team, the data science team, even the broader data and analytics team, they don't get to the positions they're in because they've spent a lot of time on storytelling. They get there because they learn the techniques that they need to have to be a data scientist. I can't be a data scientist. I can tell stories all day, but I don't have those practical techniques. If you want to move your career along, you got to learn the soft skills. And there are very few senior leaders that I've ever met who care about the how you do it before they agree and understand the why. And the why comes through storytelling.
So what are some of the essential parts of being able to correctly tell that data story?
Understanding the purpose of your business starts with the purpose of your business. People talk about, well, we need a data strategy. I'm from the school of thought that says, no, you don't. You need to point your data at enabling your business strategy. Seems again like a cliche, but very rarely do people really do it. So understand how your company delivers value to its relationships through its brands at scale. I use those words on purpose. Relationships and brands are two of the biggest, macro domains in an organization when you're managing data. Master data domains: customer, vendor, partner, prospect, citizen, patient, consumer. Those are all relationships. Different words based on what kind of business you're in. If you're a lawyer, you talk about clients. If you're a manufacturer, you talk about customers and consumers. If you're a healthcare company, you talk about patients and doctors, but they're all still relationships. You don't have relationships, you don't have a business, and your brand could be a product, a service, an offering, could have ingredients or piece parts or materials, and the relationships that help pull those together. So there's two big buckets.
So tell me this, what was the process like for you to be able to start writing the book? Like, what was the catalyst to being able to start putting all of this into words?
I studied history. So when you study history, you learn about the underlying cause and the immediate cause for things. World War I started. The immediate cause was the assassination of France's, Ferdinand in Serbia. The underlying cause were decades of turmoil in Europe and so on. So for me, the underlying cause was I knew I had some content that was resonating with folks. It was clear there was a unique perspective around putting these ideas together. I clearly had, my talents were in helping people understand that and doing it themselves, bringing, as somebody said to me early on, you've just given us a new way to talk about what we already know. That's one of the top 10 compliments I felt I ever got. I was starting to think about, pointing my career toward more of the thought leadership, event, content creation kind of space, and knew that if you write a book, it validates your positioning. You've got a tremendous amount of there's a tangible deliverable. And it always, speakers who have books get bigger speaking fees than speakers that don't have books. There were all those kinds of things in the mix. The immediate cause was COVID. It was last summer. I've been dilly-dallying about maybe writing a book, maybe not. When am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? Lockdown comes up in March. All my events canceled for the rest of the year. I had a pretty easy conversation with myself going, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. I know myself well enough that I've put it off long enough that when are you ever going to get time like this again? Not that it was, anybody felt it was this huge boon of spare time we all got, but for what I was doing, I wasn't going anywhere, and I'd been traveling like crazy for the 2 years previous. So my summer project last year was putting the book together. And
well, congratulations, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I'm thrilled with it. It's now it's ranking somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in between. It's usually in the top, I don't know, couple hundred in performing arts. So through some sort of bizarre AI-based
performing arts
Amazon categorization process, they put books in multiple categories. One of them was performing arts. So that leads me to the analytic conclusion that I am the #1 data book in performing arts. Week in, week out, #1 data book in performing arts. You're not going to find one ranking higher than mine.
Well, excellent.
You can make the numbers do anything you want, can't you? That's analytics. That's not mastering data. That's business intelligence.
Yeah. That's being able to say, what do you want it to say? All right, I can make it say that.
Flip it around that way. So there you go.
Just pay me to it. All right, what should people expect from once they pick up the book and read it? What do you believe that should be their main takeaways from it?
They get a new way to talk about what they already know. There's nothing in there about how to manage data. It is all about why you should talk about it in a different way. Takedown of, things like data quality, emotional, subjective kind of terminology, cleansing, freshness, hygiene. Back to one of your earlier questions, why aren't we getting enough attention? Bring a whole bunch of business stakeholders in there and say, we're going to launch a data hygiene program. They'll go running for the doors. It's the last thing they want to be involved with. The words we use are working against us in a lot of ways. So getting that vocabulary, helping them understand their vocabulary. I've got a section in there I call the 3 V's of data storytelling for data management, kind of a knowing wink, obviously, to the 3 V's of big data. Mine are vocabulary, voice, and vision. You want to get your vocabulary together, the words you use. You want to try to harmonize your team and your story to a common voice. Doesn't mean everybody sings the same notes, but means they sound good together. And then you want to point it at the vision of your company. There's a whole bunch of techniques in there about how to figure that out. I don't expect every person at every company to understand everything about it, but ways to hook those two things together. I give a bunch of examples of data management stories in many cases that aren't about data management. Here's what a large company said they wanted to do, and the need for data management's behind the scenes in almost every objective. Get sensitized to that. My hope is people come away with, if they're a data manager, they come away with a validation that yes, their part of the space is really important, and as important, if not more so than it's ever been. I'm trying to validate for them, yes, you're right. This stuff works. You absolutely need it. Figure out a better way to talk about it. So that kind of validation of their passion if you're in the data science space, you're spending, 60 to 120% of your time munging and wrangling data and all these other things that people talk about. A lot of that work goes away if you talk to the data management folks in your organization, because they've done that work. They can supply you with that content that meets the standard of their organization. But many data scientists seem to struggle with, how do I understand how I bring value to the business? I think there's half this book is good for anybody in the data space who are trying to figure out what their business does at a really basic level and ways to connect with the work they do in data to what their business does.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time. I really, really, really do appreciate it. It's been an absolutely phenomenal conversation. For anybody that's out there watching, please go link up with Scott on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn.
Check out the book. Any of the content that he's put out there on YouTube. I mean, he's got the puppets. He's got speaking engagement stuff that he's
the CDO, the chief dog officer. Want to have him going? Whoops, drop some stuff. My book is 99% buzzword free, so that's a guarantee for sure.
Absolutely, one of the most entertaining people in what some people would call a boring space, but like you're doing absolutely phenomenal job. Even if you were to be just stand-up comedian, I think you would do absolutely amazing. Scott, thank you for everything that you do for all the industries out there, especially coming from a data guy myself. It makes things a little bit easier for all of us when we've got somebody like you championing the cause. So any last words?
So much, David.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Scott. I do appreciate it. We'll go ahead and let you go. I've got a couple of things I got to do real quick before we bring on to the next guest. Once again, Scott, thank you guys so much. Be sure to connect with him on LinkedIn. He's absolutely phenomenal. Check out his book. Hopefully a couple of you guys bought it. I'm going to run a quick little commercial break right quick. I've got it's a phone call from somebody that I need to call back. It's going to take me like 2 seconds. But I'm going to go ahead and play that. And then Geoffery Cann, who was actually part of, and I think Scott was part of this as well, the dedicated conference series, the last one with Kate took place back in May, I think it was. And Geoffery Cann, he's Bits, Bytes, and Barrels is going to be next up on the show. He's going to be coming on at the top of the hour. So let me play this a little Weatherford video for you guys real quick, and I will be right back. I also want to try to see if I can get this dang camera to work, and then we can put it on the 3D printer, and then we can show that. So we've done 3. We've got the 4th one coming up. Right back with you guys in just a second.
Today, I'd like to talk to you about managed pressure drilling and the Weatherford approach, particularly for land applications. But first, let's talk about objectives. Our customers are tasked with completing their wells in the most efficient and safe manner to maintain their cost constraints. Managed pressure drilling allows operators to reduce mud costs, reduce and even eliminate oil control events, reduce days on well, as well as eliminate casing strains. We make undrillable wells drillable. Weatherford is the world leader in managed pressure drilling technologies and engineering expertise and capabilities. We also maintain the MPD market leader title by listening to our customers and analyzing the market. Weatherford identified technology gaps and set new standards for the industry. We offer leading engineering services and project management on-site, in-house, and remotely throughout North America. This allows us to provide a scalable approach to meet specific client needs. We can start from our world-leading RCD to our compact, modular, electric actuated Pressure Pro set-point choke system to our fully automated Victus system, but we have not stopped there.
Here at Weatherford, we always listen to the message of the client, and we do not slow down in the technology sector. By listening to our customers, we have developed a tiered approach to MPD, designated to address most challenges and desired outcomes. Based on this methodology, we are already developing our 2nd generation set point system called the Pressure Pro Plus MPD system. This compact, purpose-built system has the ability to control multiple chokes including integrated software for monitoring ECD in real time and remote monitoring through witch transmission. The Pressure Pro Plus MPD system can be installed in many configurations and is intended for onshore and offshore applications with reduced footprint and the ability to reduce personnel while providing the safest, fastest, and most efficient operation to our customers. The Weatherford Pressure Pro Plus Set Point Choke manages pressure within circulating fluid systems to enhance drilling safety, reduce operational risks, reduce personnel exposure, and maintain precise pressure control for desired ECD management. It incorporates the use of electric motors to be fast and accurate, with built-in automated features to maintain constant bottom hole pressure while in MPD applications. When the modular system is configured with extended features, it allows for semi-automated early kick loss detection to reduce non-productive time associated with well control events.
Constant bottom hole pressure is the primary MPD technique used for land applications. The Weatherford Pressure Pro Set Point Choke system incorporates automated features to maintain desired equivalent static and circulating densities. The perfect example of this is during connections. When friction is lost due to a reduction in flow rate, bottom hole pressure is also reduced. The Pressure Pro system automatically increases surface back pressure to maintain constant bottom hole pressure while pump rate is reduced and then stopped. Once the connection is made, pumps come back online, the system will automatically release pressure while downhole friction increases. The result is a constant downhole pressure to maintain desired drilling window to prevent kicks, losses, and in some cases, wellbore collapse. The Pressure Pro Set Point Choke Managed Pressure Drilling System has been used on over 350 wells since it was launched in 2017. It has helped save operators millions in mud costs, non-productive time, days on well, and most importantly, safety. While there are many other companies offering managed pressure drilling equipment and services, Weatherford has the most experience, engineering expertise, and capability to continuously offer successful MPD results while drilling, tripping, running casing, and cementing.
Hey guys, I'm back with you. Sorry about that. I had to step away just for a second. Kids' school called, or not their school, their child care program for their little summer camp thing. So didn't want to be rude and jump off during the interview, but called them right back. Everything's fine. Somebody forgot their water bottle. So back with you guys now. Oh my gosh. We've been going for almost 3 hours straight doing interviews back to back to back to back to back to back interviews. And I am trying my best. I want to see if I can get this little camera working. I think I have figured it out. I took out the little SD card. Now, click the button. It's working. All right, I need help from the audience. Can you guys hear me when I'm using this one? Is the audio coming through on this one while I'm doing this? It's working. I don't know how to get the little thing off the screen, but it's working. Not sure if there's audio on that portion of it, but it's working. I got it figured out. Okay. So here's what we're going to do real quick. I'm going to walk behind the computer. Just shift this over just a hair. Hopefully we don't lose focus. Please don't lose focus. We'll come back just a second. I'm going to set this right over here. Now, if this causes me to lose focus, we're bringing it right back. Gosh. Okay. All right, close enough. All right. I don't know how that looks, but it is set up over there. Now let's press the number 2 button here. Oh, I'm still in focus. Awesome. It's working. Phenomenal. 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 doing new stuff here on the show, and I'm enjoying it. I like to give myself challenges, especially the day of. Nothing like trying to do everything, I want to say last minute, but doing everything a little bit different. Oh, I never even turned on my hair light today. Got no hair, but we can still have a hair light. There we go. Look even better on camera now. All right, excellent. All right, for everybody that's still watching, got one little quick thing to do here. Let me get set up. So our next author coming on to the show is Geoffery Cann. He is the author of a book called Bits, Bytes, and Barrels. And so we need to edit this one and grab his book and be able to move it up here to the top. Where is it? 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 Why is it not? It should be on here. Well then, let's do this. Let's move back. We have to hit edit. Sorry guys, this is part of the whole Amazon Live thing. It's just, we can take off the 10 tabs. Move that one. That one's just a joke from yesterday. I was just having fun with things. So add bits, bytes, barrels. There it is. Add to stream. Now go back. Edit. Where is it? Is it at the bottom? It's at the very bottom. All the way up. Let's keep going, keep going. Boom. There we go. Save changes. Refresh this one. Boom, 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 boom. Nope. I was refreshing the wrong one there. There we go. Let's refresh this one. So everybody that is out there watching on Amazon, please hit the follow button or click unmute first so that you can hear what I'm saying, because that's apparently what you're supposed to do first. Hit the unmute button and then hit the follow button. Let us know where you're watching from. Give us a shout. Just talk to us. Appreciate it. Anybody is out there following and watching us. So now that we've got Bits, Bytes, and Barrels, the digital transformation of oil and gas, we've got that pulled up. Let's take an awesome little screenshot of this because it'll show us. Oh, it's not up there yet. Why is it not showing it? All right, we'll get that going in just a second. This is what it looks like normally. Maybe that's a good idea. And then we'll recycle it here in a second. Okay. For everybody out there in attendance, thank you guys so much. Do appreciate it. All right, next up, we got another amazing author. And the whole point of doing this today is I wanted to be able to bring the best that we have, absolutely amazing people within the oil and gas industry, and bring them forward to the masses, especially there on Amazon. But we're also live streaming on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Be able to show some of the people that, we are people. We are just, we're not bad people or anything here in the oil and gas industry. We're great people and we're doing amazing things. And so wanted to be able to bring and highlight some of those individuals directly to some of the people out there on Amazon who are buying products that are, created from energy, oil and gas, hydrocarbons, petrochemical industry. So here we go with our next guest up on the show, Geoffery Cann. Geoffery, thank you so much for being here, sir. I do appreciate it.
Hey,
looks like you're sticking a tape in a VCR right there as you were doing that.
Well, actually, I'm popping you onto the teleprompter, as it turns out. So,
excellent.
Yeah. I have quite the studio here. I don't think I've ever shown it to you, but teleprompters, multiple screens, lighting, studio microphones, hidden hidden earpieces, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it's all very cool.
Yeah. Same stuff here, doing the same thing. I did get to see a good portion of your presentation that you did with Kate on the dedicated event. It was excellent.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, actually. I had, it was only eight or 9 minutes long, So I used the power of these tools at my disposal to weave in sound effects, camera effects, and embedded videos and the like, all of which I use in my training courses to liven them up. I find the Zoom experience gets tired very quickly, and so you really need to boost your game. So it was good fun.
Well, I like I said, I really do appreciate it, because I remember when Kate put the post out there, and the first person that came to mind to be able to nominate for it was you. So I'm really happy that she did select you to be a part of it. Yeah. As you are a good steward of the industry, especially on the data side. And so it's kind of one of those like full circle things for me. I was like, all right, this is awesome. You know, Kate's a good friend. You know, she's hosting online conferences just like myself. I had one last week that we just finished up. And so usually her and I, after we get done with our conferences, like call each other up and say, okay, how did it go for you? What did you learn? What did you learn? And so there's a lot of trade learnings that are going on there between the two of us. So,
totally.
Well, for those that don't know, we'll jump into this. Give us a little bit of background on who you are and how that got into writing a book.
Oh, for sure. Well, my background, I'm a Canadian, if you can probably tell from my funny accent. I studied at McGill University, and then joined what was still is Imperial Oil, but based in Toronto. I moved out to Calgary, as all the oil industry did eventually. And that was my first exposure to oil and gas, as 3 years working in Toronto. And but it was clear without an engineering background. I'm not an engineer, commercial guy. So without an engineering background, career options would be constrained. Because if you want to run an oil refinery, you really do need to know the physics and the chemistry of how plants operate. So I went back to university, got an MBA, and joined Touche Ross, which became Deloitte, and I stayed there for almost 30 years. And in all of that time, I had a random walk around the world, as happens when you're in consulting. Eventually, I found myself back in Calgary, and funny story about this. I was in China working on a project, and I was in a little town called Baicheng, which in Chinese means white city. And the hotel we're staying at had no front door. And it's called White City because it's so far north. It's in the snow, like it's freezing cold up there. So imagine a hotel with no front door. Right? The front desk staff, they're all dressed up in these thick woolen coats and hats and gloves, like there's some sort of cast actors in an epic World War II movie or something from the invasion of Stalingrad. It's the only time I've ever seen people bundled up more warmly. There was no heat in the hotel. There was hot water for 1 hour a day, so you had to take your turns to get a shower. I know, it's crazy. There were no street lights. Not that you could see anything, because the coal dust from all the coal fires, people burning coal for their dinners, generated this intense fog that was impenetrable by streetlights. So I couldn't see at night. So here we are. And I took photographs because I couldn't believe it. I took photographs of donkey carts delivering coal door to door. And I came back to Calgary and I said to my wife, we're going to work in the energy industry. I just saw 1 billion people in China getting their energy delivered door to door by donkey cart, living in a coal fog, no heat, no light. I mean, the demand for energy it had nowhere to go but up. So I came back and devoted the rest of my life and my career to helping bring energy to the world. And of course, as you know, we're in our greatest challenge right now is dealing with environmental issues and dealing with digital. I got to put the book together because after a tour of duty in Australia, where I was studying the LNG industry, I became aware that these digital innovations were coming at the industry they're a little bit delayed from what we were seeing already in consumer goods and finance and telecommunications, but they were coming. And I thought that there was an opportunity in the marketplace to become an independent voice of reason that talks to the industry in terms the industry can understand about the imperative to embrace these tools to improve the industry's environmental performance, improve its economic structure, and most importantly, buy time so that we can engineer an appropriate transition to newer, cleaner fuels. So that was the story behind the book, and why I put it together was to address that concern.
So in writing the book, going through that process of you know, putting it together and stuff, like, what were some of the big challenges for you going through that process?
Well, the first time you put a book together is completely novel. What I found with the way I wrote the book, by the way, is I write a weekly article, still write a weekly article series about digital innovation in oil and gas. And once you've accumulated, and these articles are 1,500 words roughly. Now, if you throw away the top 200 words and the bottom 200 words, right, the introduction and the conclusion, you're left with about 1,000 words of text. And if you are thoughtful about it, after 60 weeks of writing, you've got 60,000 words. And a business book's around 75,000 words, roughly. And so after a year of this, a little over a year, you've written a book. You just don't know what it looks like yet. It's a bit like a sculptor in ancient Rome, right? They start with a column of rock, and the message is the statue is in the rock. You just have to find it. So it's the same thing with these articles. Once they're written, they do form a book, but what's the story? So what you have to do is take the articles and recast them so that they tell an appropriate story, and then you fill in where you've got some holes. And so that was the first insight, was the book already exists. It just, how do you structure the story so that you get the book out? And that was probably and that's a heavy lift, right? That's 6 to 8 weeks of structuring paragraphs into a storyline. That was a big issue. Then the second challenge was obviously getting the structure right. That's a lot of conversation, discussion. Third problem is, if you don't build the book in a structured fashion, in other words, you build your references as you go by, you build your glossary of terms as you're thinking about it, you interview people so that you get some great quotes. Unless you do all that at the same time, you end up having to do these things in a sequence versus doing them in parallel. And it's much more efficient to do it in parallel than to do it in sequence. So that's a kind of three things that I kind of learned about all of the book writing exercise.
It's really interesting you say it, because one of the guests that we had on a little bit ago was Tim Wigham from Exceed, and he talked about how essentially the process for him was to he wrote an article, like a LinkedIn article, for 52 weeks straight, and then made that a book, and then did it again, and then did it again. So it was 3 years in a row, 3 different books. And then his final one, Automated Acceleration, he put, sorry, I got a mustache hair that keeps wanting to tickle my nose. But then he put all 3 of those together for the final book. And so it's interesting to hear that, you know, essentially 2 out of the 4 authors that we have on here today have done a similar strategy, and it's writing that blog series and putting those posts out there, and then combining those to be able to create the book. So I guess the question there would be, like, you know, somebody asked earlier, we didn't get to the question earlier, but we can definitely do it now. Would that be your advice for somebody who's looking to potentially be able to write a book, is just to be able to start small and keep doing this on a continual weekly basis?
It absolutely would be. I didn't invent this technique personally. I learned it from the chief global scientist for Royal Dutch Shell Group, who also writes an article series for Shell. And someone introduced him to me because he had also converted his article series into a book, and this is what he had done. And so I copied that technique. The other secret to all of this, I think, is it reminds me of a trip I made to Paris many years ago. We're walking down the Champs-Élysées, and there's a makeup store there, I don't know what it was called, but because I'm not into makeup, but someone will know what it is, L'Oreal or something. You go into the makeup store, and there was a perfume analyst there. And she was seated in a shed stool, and then seated all around her was this array of fragrances. And what she did was she looked at you and she had a little conversation, and then she made a custom fragrance just for you by taking a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of this. And so what she had done is she had laid out all of the fragrances first. It was kind of like a amphitheater of fragrances. They were sort of steered up like this on rows, and there were the florals and the woodies and the musks and all laid out. And I said, you know what? You could actually write a book in the same fashion. What you do is you create a matrix, a spreadsheet, rows and columns. In my case, the columns rather, we'll start with the columns: upstream, midstream, downstream, field services, capital projects, trading, finance, supply chain, human capital and resources, geopolitics. These are the big structural elements of the industry. And then the rows are things like artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, blockchain, security, automation, autonomy, IT practices. Now, what that means is, and then what I do is I then write an article that fits either a hole, a cell in that matrix, or it addresses a column, latest innovations in digital and upstream, or it does a row, blockchain in oil and gas. And then sometimes I'll do cybersecurity at the pump, at the fuel pump, which is super niche when you think about it. But there will be somebody out there who is thinking about that exact problem. Once you've got all of that laid out, I now have all the fragrances. If you think about it, I've just built the rows, the columns, and the cells. And from there, I can now, if I think about this at the start of my year, I lay out the landscape like that. I now actually have enough topic areas that I can creatively research and write about. And so, to a degree, my inspiration to do the actual book comes from a fragrance lab on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. And then the actual construction activity comes from the global chief scientist at Royal Dutch Shell, who said this is how you put your book together once you've done all of that. So there you go. There's the story.
That's quite a genesis point for something that ends up happening to be about oil and gas and data transformation. That it was the perfume place there in Paris. It's a very interesting take, and I'm pretty sure I won't hear that one again in any of the interviews that we do here. Okay, so you mentioned a couple of things in there that I do want to touch on, and that obviously are falling within the domain of some of the articles that you've written, which is cybersecurity in the oil and gas space, and more recently with the Dominion pipeline and stuff. What is your take on that, and is that something that you had written about beforehand and now people are taking serious, or is that more of a retrospect item?
No, I had flagged cybersecurity long ago as a significant worry for a variety of reasons. The Colonial pipeline disaster, the ransomware attack, is only just the latest.
Colonial, not Dominion. Sorry, Colonial.
Yeah, not Dominion. Yeah. Colonial. Yeah, it's only the latest in a long series of attacks on infrastructure. An even more serious one, which has sort of faded from view. That's what happens with these things. They pop up, they're newsworthy for a bit, and then they go away. But there are many, many more serious ones. As an example, there's a specific piece of SCADA equipment that's supervisory control and data acquisition equipment. If you don't know the acronyms, it's like the real-time computer that controls a power plant or a chemical facility or a refinery or a nuclear plant. And there's this particular brand, and I can't remember the name or the brand number, but there's 75,000 of them sold around the world. And they're in wide use in oil and gas, particularly in the petrochemical industry. And one of them is in Saudi Arabia. And some hackers had figured out how to attack this thing and got themselves into it. And what they were trying to do was fiddle with this SCADA controller so that it would ignore warnings of the pressure vessel becoming too pressurized or too heated. Now, why is this a worry? It explodes. So they were aiming to create a dramatic catastrophe. Not just, so not flying drones, because remember that incident a year ago, drones from somewhere flew into Saudi Arabia and hammered some of their oil plant. This is actually now, let's go and attack this thing from the inside. And so that's gone from memory, but it's a good example of how cyber issues are a top of mind concern for any board member. Like, what you do not want to be is a board member on an oil and gas concern that has been hacked. Because they're not going after customer data, right? There's no personal data. My personal data is not in an oil company. Yes, it's on Facebook, but it's not in an oil company. But so what are they going after, right? They're going after infrastructure. They're going to go after cause some chaos and some mayhem. That's what they're really, really after. So I wrote about it long ago because it was apparent to me, because if you watch these incidents over time, the Colonial Pipeline was just the latest in a long series of attacks that have taken place against our infrastructure.
So obviously, having been a part of this, the oil and gas industry for quite some time, especially on the consulting side, when did you start to see that the digital transformation within oil and gas was going to be something paramount and something extremely important to the industry?
Well, my first indications of it came about while I was working in Australia in the Queensland gas field area. I had moved to Australia in 2012, early 2013. And I'm in Australia, and I as you do, you have to set up banking. So you go to the bank and you set up a bank account. And first thing you learn is the Australian banking system is much more sophisticated than Canada's banking system is. In Canada, if you want to send somebody some money, I want to pay you or send some money home or to my mom or what have you, you do it through email. And in Australia, you do app-to-app transfer. You just put their bank account number into your app and the money goes to their bank. Super simple. This was like 10 years ago. So Australia, further ahead, much further ahead in banking of all things. Now you go to the gas fields and the drilling activities, and because their banking system was more sophisticated, that meant that the businesses there could do things that are more sophisticated than we could just with banking alone. So there, right away, you could see the digital drivers coming into into oil and gas through the financial sector, financial side. Because the employees all had smartphones, because they're all doing banking on their phone, because that's how you did it. It meant that mobility apps and presence in the field and the use of these digital tools in the field was much more common in Australia than it was in Canada. So you have all these wired up workers. The gas fields, because of their sheer scale and their remoteness, the gas operators all had to turn on their own telecommunications networks so that they could run the gas wells remotely, all done remotely. And I'm like, wow, imagine turning on a whole new gas business where every well has 10 to 15 sensors on it, electronic sensors, to do things like turn it on, turn it off, check its pressure, ramp it up, ramp it down, detect damage, all that stuff. All built in from the get-go. And that's where it kind of dawned on me. And I said, you know what, this if they can do this in Australia, we can do this in North America.
So how far behind do you think at that point in time was other parts of the world compared to where Australia was at?
Well, as it turns out, the much of what was going on in Australia was driven because there was a huge shortage of people in Australia who understood how to do the oil and gas industry. Australia actually imported all of that expertise from away. So it came from Canada, the United States, and the UK.
I was one of them. Yep.
Yeah, principally. Yeah, exactly. And because they had a clean sheet of paper, they were able to do some things that were novel relative to other parts of the world. So for a while, they were considerably further ahead. And every time there was a new compression station or a new asset that was being rolled out, the Australians were in a position to trial something new and do something different. So my sense is that they were, at least at that point in time, they were quite a bit ahead. In North America, because much of our infrastructure is brownfield, it's been around for a long time. And once it's built and running, is very little incentive to kind of make it more sophisticated from an automation standpoint. My sense is that the Australian infrastructure relative was going to be much more modern than North American, at least for a considerable length of time. But what's changed everything is the pandemic. The pandemic has forced North American operators to think quite differently about their assets now.
So how much do you think that legacy assets is actually holding back the industry?
Legacy assets are a huge drag on the industry. When these assets are built, they're engineered to hit a certain performance criteria at the time of the plant design. And then the owner operators are incented to run the facility to hit that design criteria. And that can be utilization rate or uptime or throughput or energy consumption, what have you. And then you run the thing 24/7 so that you maximize your return through using that asset, that utilization rate. That gives you this usually annually, a tiny little window during which you can introduce new innovations and new changes. And during that window, you got a lot of other stuff you got to do, debottlenecking and repairs and maintenance. There's not a lot of incentive or time there to take those assets and rewire them so we bring them up to a new level of performance. Give you an idea of just how intriguing this is. There's a new facility being built in the United States. I can't remember which operator it is, ExxonMobil, I think. But instead of using a traditional engineering company to build the asset, they elected to use a defense contractor. They might say, well, why would a defense contractor be qualified to build supervisory equipment in an oil refinery? Well, the reason is, if you're a defense contractor and you're building a fighter jet, and that fighter jet's going to be flying for 20 years, every year you're going to have to add new weapons, better quality radar, different detection technologies, different satellite locational services, different encryption technologies, all that stuff. Otherwise, these jet planes are, they'd be out of date, literally, for the next theater of war opportunity. So in oil and gas terms, it's as if we build fighter jets and then we stop maintaining them for the next war action. So what Exxon did was they said, all right, well, let's bring a defense contractor in to design the information capabilities of our next refinery and see if we can't break that paradigm where we create an infrastructure for our facility that lets us add to it and adjust it and move it up and move it down and embrace new features over time. Very creative.
So with the downstream side of the industry, I see where that works. What do you think it needs to be attacked on the upstream side of the business?
Well, it's interesting, you would think that the upstream first of all, the upstream industry, to be very clear, is more dynamic than the downstream, as it turns out, because as you go into new reservoirs and you're trying to improve the yields out of reservoirs, your performance capability goes up and up and up every time. You can see this. You just look at the yield curve on shale deposits and you can see the curve shape is dramatically changed. Initially, you get 5% out of the reservoir, then 10, then 15, and now you're much higher. So the upstream industry, make no mistake, it's very, very dynamic and in terms of embracing changes and the like. But what the industry doesn't do very well is rethink its underlying infrastructure and architecture. And the reason for that is that the economics are typically very compelling to just go and drill another oil well rather than go and retrofit all of the existing wells to make them better. And so therein lies the dilemma. How do you make the economics work? And we're at a point in time right now where the economics now work. It is now if you do the math, there is a very clear decision you have to take. Do I go and fix the legacy infrastructure that I have and make it more efficient, or do I drill a new well? And when the last year and a half, certainly with the commodity prices being very low and supply very high, it was economically much more powerful to go and fix the business rather than drill another well.
So with us, having, a lot of things like taking place on the downstream side, the upstream side being very, dynamic and changing from field to field and from, time period to time period. What are some of the big successes that you have seen, throughout the oil industry where a company really took on taking on that digital transformation and said, okay, we are going to put some effort into this?
Well, there are actually relatively few examples yet of oil and gas companies that have dramatically overhauled or transformed what they're doing. And so you can't really point to, this company or this company and say, hey, they're the rock stars. Most are still continuing to wrestle with and struggle with this. Virtually all the majors, though, have stood up a digital transformation team, a digital strike force, a SWAT team, a council, something to help drive the agenda forward. But it takes a very, very, very long time to roll these changes throughout these big, heavy industrial companies so that they are retrofit. For my next book, I have interviewed 9 companies so far, and I'm looking for a couple more to include. I'm writing case studies about what they're up to. And I would point to the Europeans as being further ahead, interestingly, mostly because they are much more focused on the environmental issues than North American companies have been. As you may remember, through the Trump administration, environmental sensitivity in North America went down dramatically, and the Europeans leapt ahead. And now the Americans are playing catch up. So the innovations the Europeans have put in to try and figure out how do we monitor for our methane emissions, how do we deal with our carbon issues, how do we deal with our rules around privacy and the like. The Europeans are further ahead in that regard. So I look to Shell, Repsol, Equinor as the companies that are leading the way. But even those companies, I would argue, have a long way to go before that you could look at them and go, well, they're operating at a digital level like a Google or an Amazon. We're still a long ways away from that.
So when you say a digital transformation team, what would that mean to a company if they were looking to be able to put something together like that?
Well, it depends on where you are in the industry. So that you're a transformation team, if you are a product company or you're selling technology to your client, it's going to look quite different than if you're a transformation team working down in an operational area. So what you have to do is pick and choose your spots. So if there's typically digital is going to have an effect on your internal operations, as well as on your customers and products that you sell. Use an example. I was working with a downhole company in the Middle East in January of this year. And their downhole tool had a dashboard and collected data that had fed up to it came up to the surface. And they used this tool to optimize well performance. And the problem is it was very expensive, even though it was math, largely it was very expensive, hand-tooled, and laborious to install. And the only places they were able to sell it were to offshore oil companies where the wells are gigantic and you can afford that sort of thing. The opportunity for that was, how do I get this same technology into the cloud such that it can be self-delivered, not delivered by the experts in the company, and then sold to thousands and thousands, if not millions of wells? That was the big prize. So their transformation agenda wasn't about, oh, let me go fix my supply chain and clean up the way I do purchasing or selling or contracting. Their opportunity was, how do I take my technology, digitalize it, and make it available in a fashion that allows me to roll it out to millions of customers, not just a handful. That's a very different prospect than if you are, say, at a big refinery and you are trying to figure out, how do I introduce the use of mobility apps or use cloud computing and machine learning to run my refinery? Your team is going to look quite different.
So what questions should a company be asking themselves to be able to see if putting some kind of digital transformation together is the right approach?
Well, I would say I use a couple of markers as an indication. I ask companies to look around and identify the parts of their business that have not materially changed in 5 years. In other words, you brought somebody back from 5 years ago and said, here's the work we're doing. If someone from 5 years ago would recognize what you're doing and be able to, with a minimum amount of training, be able to kind of do the job that you're doing, it's probably ripe for some transformation. It doesn't take, because in 5 years' time, you have to imagine what's happened in 5 years, right? We've had multiple generations of smartphone technology. Cloud computing has gone from a sideline to a major play. The integration and connectivity around the world is now dramatically higher. Better satellites taking dramatically better photography now exist at a dramatically lower cost. So all it takes is just wait for 5 years. If you haven't materially tackled that part of your company, it's probably ripe. And you can imagine, right? You look at any oil and gas facility, like a plant that's been running, most of them running for 5 years, they will look exactly the same way as they did from 5 years ago. That's the sign to tell you, have I materially shifted the dial here and moved this along? We can see this in the auto industry. It's very clear what happened. Tesla started out 15 years ago with this, or 10 years ago with this rubbish car called the Roadster. Thing barely drove, and everyone dismissed Tesla in the automotive industry, right? He's a Bitcoin loving, flame throwing junkie, and those were his good points, So now. So then he launches, right? The what came after the Roadster was the Model S, and a ridiculous price tag. People said, there's no charge points, range anxiety, won't go very far. It won't work in the winter. You can't run the air conditioning and the heater in extreme temps. It won't work. And then he introduced the Model 3. And people actually put down payments to buy the car. Remember that wave? And the automotive makers, all the automakers said, nobody puts a down payment down on a car. That's ridiculous. And look at the console. It's got this big honking iPad right in the middle of it. It looks more like a phone than it does a car, honestly. And look at where he's at today. Tesla is now worth as much as the next 3 or 4 automakers combined. And he produces a fraction of the vehicles. He's fundamentally forced the industry to rethink how it does things. And so if you're staring at even your whole of company and you're saying, well, I haven't broken out from the rest of the industry, because the way Tesla's broken out from automakers, if I haven't broken out from the rest of the industry, if my share price is the same as everybody else in my class, you have not even started with what it is that's possible for you as a transformation program.
So how big do you think the digital transformation movement is being pushed on by small startup companies like Tesla? Because Tesla was a startup at one point in time. Do you see an emerging group of startup companies that could potentially be leading the way?
It is customary with these incumbent companies that are the big industrial concerns that are kind of lumbering and not very nimble. It's customary for them to have their markets eaten away by small firms and startups. It's happened over and over and over again in so many other sectors: telecommunications and financial services and banking and entertainment and games and media, right? And entertainment. Like we've watched it happen over and over again. So the argument is, well, that's going to happen to energy. And when you think about it, the oil and gas companies, for the most part, are underplaying the future energy world, which is more electronics and electrical than it is fossil fuels. And that's creating space for alternatives to start to come into the marketplace. And so the pressure on the industry to address that, I think, is genuine and quite real. But I also know that when you think about industrial energy production, big plants and scale, there's very, very few companies that actually can do things like stand up a big facility, get all the permits in place, mobilize the cash and capital it requires, aggregate the customer volume, and pull that together to create a package of an investable project. That is the purview of large energy companies. So thinking a small company is going to stand up and do that is pretty far-fetched. But don't underestimate the Amazons of the world. They have so much capital. Like their ability to invest is just beyond comprehension now about what they could do. So the next energy company in the future might not actually be a startup per se. It might be Amazon. And the reason I say that is, if you look at their big facilities, the big data centers that they use, they're very good now at finding, sourcing, and managing energy into their data centers. And they're locating them all over the place because they have to. Governments are saying, you can't move your data out of my country. So they're starting to lay the groundwork for a footprint of energy delivery businesses. They're not a startup, though.
No, definitely not a startup. At least I don't see Amazon as being the startup.
No, I don't see them either as a startup. But they would be a novel entrant into that industry.
So, how much do you think that oilfield service companies should be looking at some of these big companies as new potential buyers of their services?
I think the field service companies are, on my forecast, is they are the most, they are the canary in the coal mine around digital innovation and digital adoption. And the reason for that is that their capital turns over faster than capital in oil and gas. If you build an oil and gas business, your oil well, you build it and it's going to run for 7 to 10 years. Maybe your oil refinery will run for 30 years. So your capital turns over 30 years. Whereas if you're a field services company, your capital might turn over in 3 years. You have a drilling rig, but after 2 years in the field, it's so beaten up and broken and damaged and all these parts replaced, it's Franken rig. You may as well get a new rig. So that's what they do. They invent and develop a new rig. So their capital turns over faster. So services companies actually have the opportunity, because their capital cycles so much more quickly, to be pushing the envelope around innovation, adoption of digital innovation within the industry. And so that gives them, that puts them into a very, very privileged position. It's not a stretch to see how companies that do things like energy optimization for an oil and gas business now turn around and offer that service to other industrial concerns or big digital companies.
So do you think that some of the oilfield service companies should definitely be looking at just because of the rapid pace of what they do, to be able to see where their services may apply to other industries?
Yeah, there's definitely a play there. But I would also argue that if you look at the world of fossil fuels, we are going to be consuming fossil fuels for the foreseeable future. It's just going to take time for us to overhaul the energy infrastructure around which the world revolves. And so there will be a steady demand for what these companies are actually doing and delivering in oil and gas. Because their capital turns over so quickly, because the wave of digital change is so fast, because the environmental pressures are so great. It's my view that these services companies should be thinking about how do they help the oil and gas industry survive, not just shift over to other industries. I think it's premature to do that. There's still a long runway in front of us.
So for the companies that are out there, potential startups and existing companies, what do you see as the biggest land grab area for companies? Like, what's the biggest open market where maybe there's not enough competitors or there's a big demand? Is it artificial intelligence? Is it blockchain? Is it cybersecurity? Is it data management? Is it data optimization?
Or is it all of the above? Well, the biggest areas of opportunity that I see are the ones that are driven by today's market demands for which there isn't a clear answer. A good example of that is carbon tracking and carbon credits. So, for instance, if you're a European oil company today and you anticipate that your product, fossil fuels, are going to be combusted by somebody somewhere for the next 10 years or so, what does that mean? You're going to have to go find a carbon sink somewhere to compensate or offset the carbon expense that you're generating as the fuel business. And the world does not trust large industry to say that, trust me, I know I can show you the fuel that's being consumed here, but trust me, I've built a sink over here. The world just, the level of trust there is really, really low. And if you start to go back and ask, well, yes, but how much carbon is in your sink, and how old is it, and how much carbon are you actually capturing? We don't actually even have good quality baseline data tracking, visibility, and transparency into all of that stuff. And this is going to have to be done globally. It's not going to be just, I'm burning fossil fuels in France, so I'm going to have a carbon sink in France. No, you're going to have a carbon sink in Brazil or Argentina or somewhere. We need that visibility because carbon itself, it's interplanetary. There's no national borders. So this has to be done on a transnational basis. And we don't have the infrastructure in place to do even these simple stuff like measure the baseline. That's a huge, huge opportunity.
Wow. How do we even go about starting to solve that?
Well, I think the oil companies are starting to address that exact question by doing things like figuring out their current footprint. Right? Where is our baseline? They're trying to figure out how do you track carbon? Like one way is if you burn fossil fuels, you can go based on the assumption that the engine technology runs in a certain fashion. It's going to produce so much carbon. So engineering first principles. That's not entirely accurate when your equipment leaks and your methane emissions are popping up through broken seals. And so there's a whole other way to come at this, which is much more accurate and much more precise, which is what was actually happening, not just what is the engineering first principles that I'm working with. That and just resolving those two worlds, that alone is we're going to be years away while we try and sort these kinds of questions out.
So essentially putting a sensor on the exhaust of all the generators at the rig site.
That's one way to do it. Another way is cameras to stare at the plumes and be able to pick out a CO2 or a methane thread through the exhaust. Another is to use a satellite imagery to zero in on where there is a clear methane plume that's blooming. To get down to, you have to get down to quite precise points so that you can actually zero your team towards fixing a known leak or a known problem. So there's a lot of data and a lot of processing just to do even that. That answering that question is going to be pretty hard.
Well, I no doubt I know that you'll be staying on top of that. Before we get down to here towards the end, I want to ask, so if somebody does pick up the book, which if anybody is out there watching on Amazon, please be sure to click the link below. It is the featured item on there, Bits, Bytes, and Barrels. What would be the biggest takeaway for somebody who does pick up and read the book?
Biggest takeaway. The biggest takeaway, I think, is that the business case for embracing digital innovation in oil and gas is absolutely solid. These digital tools have been de-risked, and they help the industry solve problems on multiple dimensions at the same time. Lowering cost, improving productivity, attracting talent. Young people want to work with companies that are pretty sophisticated now, and reducing emissions. That's the prize of why the industry should be embracing digital. It crushes on 4 dimensions at the same time.
Well, Geoffery, thank you so much for taking part and being on the show today. This has been absolutely amazing. opportunity to be able to have you here and to be able to do this all on YouTube, LinkedIn, and on Amazon. I didn't think I would keep all of these streaming the entire time. Definitely been a marathon for me here. So
StreamYard does the job. So
yes,
I have built some applause though. Can I play some applause?
Go for it.
Ready? Let's see if this will work.
I need to get my Stream Deck able to do that one as well. I got a couple other things to be able to upgrade here over the next little bit to be able to start doing some of those things. But for now, I've got my technical difficulties to be able to work out. I can still get, hopefully, see if this is still working. And it's not. I guess the camera went off, so I'll probably have to hook up the power. Probably be doing some more of these. Oh, look, there we go.
Yeah, this is my jam is putting my camera to work, doing the same thing as you, which is change backgrounds, move the image around. So I'm doing my training courses. It's set up like this. So
are you using Wirecast?
I use Wirecast today. I'm not using Wirecast. This is just straight up using an ATEM Mini Pro to do the camera handling. But I've done some programming with some light duty HTML coding within the ATEM Mini to do camera management and camera manipulation. And this is just background, instant background changing, which is pretty easy. But I programmed the ATEM to move camera images around the screen and change backgrounds to different things. The one I was just showing you was my Macintosh desktop. I'm running a training course in a few minutes, and so my desktop looks like this. And so when I'm doing my course, as you can see, I move my image around on the screen and I bring my slide material up to the side, so it looks very professional.
Well done, sir. I would have to say it looks very good. I don't know if I can get mine to see. I can do mine a little bit with my ATEM as well.
Yeah, pop around the screen.
So yeah, I've been having fun with mine. I just haven't done as much. I'm trying to get the multiple camera setup going right now, and the camera that I'm using, it's brand new. Just got it yesterday, so still working out some of the bugs there. But always great to be able to talk to somebody else who's dabbling in experimenting with a bunch of the different capabilities within live streaming. Yes,
yep.
Well done, sir.
You bet. It's all fun and games, and it's very worthwhile.
It's so much better than just doing typical Zoom meetings as well. So I don't have my green screen behind me. This is actually my actual background here. So my green screen's over on that side. I'd move everything around, but I'd probably end up knocking something over in the process because I got things cabled up on short cables right now. So,
well, I'll show you what my setup looks like since you've got an audio.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just get out of the screen here. So this is you're on my phone here. So I've got the phone wired into the ATEM. You can kind of see what the desktop looks like. So there's a controlling monitor, main monitor. This is the teleprompter here.
Well done.
And you sort of upside down on the teleprompter. There's the microphone, studio mic.
Shotgun mic.
Lighting. Yeah. And then on the desk is this is the Stream Deck where I do the sort of controlling, the image controlling, the ATEM for camera control. This is a mic kill switch. When I cough, I can just press the kill switch and kill the mic. This is a Zoom mic controller. So yeah, it's pretty set up. And then in behind me, of course, is here we are.
Beautiful green screen.
Beautiful green screen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well done. Good. Not many other people in the oil and gas industry have a setup that outdoes mine. So I am thoroughly impressed, sir.
It's I sort of saw this in March last year when my public speaking work just vanished in a puff of COVID-related microparticles, and I ended up having to virtualize literally overnight. So within about 2 months, I had figured out, okay, so what does a studio need to look like? And so from here, I can do podcasting, live streaming, training course delivery, videos like this, all to, with the same set of technology. And yeah, very appealing.
Very impressive. Well done, sir. I applaud you in your efforts. It definitely looks good. So
yeah, it's grand.
Hats off to you there.
Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much for taking part. I do appreciate it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, and then I'm going to do my sign off here.
All right,
everybody else out there. So be sure to check out the book, connect with him on LinkedIn, check out the podcast, and all other social media channels. Look out for Geoffery Cann and his amazing books, Bits, Bites, and Barrels. All right, finally, here we go. I'm going to. I've done it, completed the task. 4 interviews, 4 hours straight, all on Amazon Live, all on other things. So anybody out there, please be sure to, if you guys are watching on Amazon, I'm looking over at that camera because it's the screen with all the Amazon stuff. We still got 22 people watching there. More people watching on Amazon than there is left on YouTube and LinkedIn. So really do appreciate y'all, supporting this. Oil and gas industry is full of absolutely amazing people. We just want to be able to bring you our stories here on all 3 platforms. So if you guys got any other questions, please be sure to hit me up. I'm going to take a lunch break. I think I'm going to do another interview tomorrow that might be on LinkedIn. I definitely have some more stuff for Amazon Live later today with Bob Bryant, who is my older cousin, who is the author of the book called Slaying the Dragon. He is also a professor at University of St. Edwards on video game design and production. So he's absolutely amazing person to be able to talk to. Hopefully you guys tune in for that one here in a little while. Until then, get all of my stuff set up here. Brand, click the button, click that button. As always, know your industry.